Also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
He's the king of breakfast TV, and he's back. Eamon Holmes, back on the TV with me this morning.
Even remember my name.
I know, it's been 4 months. You have holy water by your bed?
Oh, yes. Already to bless.
Yeah. Oh, Eamon. Oh.
Why do you not believe anything I say?
Eamon Holmes back on GB News Breakfast at 6 a.m.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome to Mark Dolan tonight, and we kick off with the People's Hour, in which I'm taking your video calls on a range of topics, including, is Keir Starmer Tony Blair 2.0? That's what we're asking. Also, why aren't politicians allowed to be Christians anymore? We'll talk about Roald Dahl, a U-turn from the publishers of his brilliant books, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. They are now going to publish the original version in its politically incorrect glory. Is wokism in decline? And should the UK grow more of its own food, given the fact that we're running out of turnips? Lots to get through. Don't forget, after 9, My Big Opinion, in which I'll be dealing with the Green Lobby, who want to take meat off your plate. And My Take at 10, in which I'll be sorting out Prince Harry, who wants an apology in return for a place at King Charles's wonderful coronation celebrations. If anyone is apologising, it should be Harry himself. A busy 3 hours. The People's Panel next. But first, the headlines with Ray.
Thanks, Mark. Here's the latest. Rishi Sunak says he's giving everything and hopes to achieve a new deal over the Northern Ireland Protocol by the end of this weekend. Speaking to the Sunday Times, the Prime Minister said he's hopeful of a positive outcome with the European Union. Describing it as unfinished business, he said it's vital to ensure a return to power sharing in the province. The comments come after Ireland's Taoiseach Leo Varadkar said an agreement was possible but not guaranteed in the coming days. Most members of the G20 have condemned the war in Ukraine, except for China and Russia, who refused to sign a joint declaration. It comes as Ukraine's president says he plans to meet China's Xi Jinping after Beijing set out a peace plan for the two countries. Volodymyr Zelensky says it would be beneficial for security around the world. Russian citizens living in Britain have staged a protest outside of the Russian embassy in London against their country's invasion of Ukraine. It comes a day after the one-year anniversary of the start of President Putin's incursion of the country. The widower of poisoned dissident Alexander Litvinenko, who was there, said she was proud of the protesters.
I'm very proud to see this big crowd of Russian people, a lot of young people. Maybe never went to this kind of protest, but I saw their faces and they've been all very loud to say how they're against the war, how they support Ukraine, how they hate Putin.
Well, earlier, hundreds gathered in County Tyrone to demand an end to violence in Northern Ireland after the attempted murder of an off-duty policeman. Detective Chief Inspector John Caldwell was shot outside a sports centre on Wednesday. He remains in critical condition. 5 suspects have been arrested. Detectives say the incident is being treated as terror-related and could be connected to the new IRA. A 3.7 magnitude earthquake was felt in South Wales last night. The British Geological Survey saying that it hit Bryn Mawr near Crick Howell just before midnight. The tremor felt as far away as Cardiff. Residents on social media described being woken to their whole house shaking. We're on TV, online and on DAB+ radio. This is GB News. Back now to Mark Dolan.
My thanks to the brilliant and trustworthy Ray Addison, who's with me all evening. Welcome to Mark Dolan Tonight. We start with the People's Hour, in which I'll be taking your video calls on the big stories of the day. Tonight, the stars of the show are Sue in Cheshire, Andrew in Dudley, Susan in South Wales, and Fergus in Woolwich. We'll be hearing from them throughout the course of the next 60 minutes. The topics we'll be debating tonight, with Keir Starmer setting out his 5 missions for Britain this week. With some rhetoric reminiscent of 90s New Labour, I'll be asking, is Keir Starmer the new Tony Blair? Is he Tony Blair 2.0? The frontrunner for the SNP leadership has faced backlash this week over her faith-motivated stances on issues such as same-sex marriage. So off the back of this, I'll be posing the question, has Britain become an anti-Christian country? And why can't politicians be Christians anymore? After Roald Dahl's publishers' U-turn on their decision to alter language from his classic novels after a huge public rebellion, does this mean that wokism, so-called extreme political correctness, is now in decline? And with reports of food shortages plaguing Britain and the Environment Secretary telling us to eat turnips over tomatoes, I want to know, should the UK be growing more of its own food? My Saturday sidekick for the first hour of the show is economist, businessman and media commentator Alpesh Patel. It's a busy 3 hours, folks. After 9, in my big opinion, there is a concerted effort to make this country plant-based. Well, if you think you're going to take meat off my plate, you can burger off. In the big question, is digital ID a step too far? And in my take at 10, Prince Harry says he wants an apology if he's going to attend the King's coronation. If anything, it's this disloyal crybaby who should be saying sorry. So this is Mark Dolan Tonight. A busy 3 hours. It's Saturday, so shall we have some fun? Put something cold and fizzy in the fridge. We've got Alpesh bringing the lols. Fire up the kettle and let's have a night to remember. And we'll kick off with the People's Hour. Back to me, Sam. Take your time. You've obviously been to the pub before appearing on air. Keir Starmer has outlined his 5-point mission to become Prime Minister. They include a plan for economic growth, fixing the NHS, making Britain's streets safe, boosting opportunity, and making Britain a clean energy superpower. Notable in his speech was some distinctly Blairite language, including a plan to tackle crime and tackle the causes of crime. So can Keir Starmer occupy the political centre ground, attract Conservatives as well as Labour voters, and can he replicate his predecessor's 3 election victories? Is Keir Starmer the new Tony Blair? Is he Tony Blair 2.0? Before we get to my viewers, let's get the view of entrepreneur and broadcaster Alpesh Patel. Is this guy Tony Blair's stunt double? Can he achieve the same?
I'm trying to keep a straight face when people ask that. I've met Tony Blair. I know Tony Blair. I wouldn't quite say Tony Blair's my friend, but I've had dinner at his grade 2 listed home. Keir Starmer is no Tony Blair. I mean, come on, bring the charisma before you even think about it. But they've got to go to Blair because if you exclude Blair, then by the time of the next general election, it will have been almost half a century since a Labour leader won a general election other than, as I say, Blair. I mean, who are they going to go to? Oh, yeah, he's a bit of Callaghan right there, or a bit of inspiring Wilson. The sort of Generation X don't even know who the heck you're talking about. They barely remember Blair. But, yeah, Blair was charismatic, and Keir Starmer hasn't got that. Sadly, given that he's a barrister, King's Counsel, you'd expect a bit more sort of oomph. But I'm afraid he doesn't bring it. But looks like they'll still win anyway by what the polls are saying.
Well, it seems his camp are a little over-optimistic because there's talk of Keir Starmer planning not just his first term in government, but his second term. I mean, that means that I'm going to start planning my hot date with Paris Hilton.
If you're planning 2 terms, it smacks a bit of Neil Kinnock and Sheffield, doesn't it? I think they'll be mindful of that. Yeah. I don't think they'll be doing that, but I suspect they're just thinking, listen, just don't mess it up. Just keep the focus off us because we're, 27 points ahead in the polls. You know, the funny thing is, even though they're that far ahead, it would still be technically a minority government in the sense that they won't have got more than 50% of the British electorate voting for them. It's a wonderful sort of perverse democracy we've got where you will have a stomping majority if they win on these poll figures, but they won't have, but they'll have basically more than half the people who won't have voted for them.
Fascinating stuff. Alpesh is with me for the whole hour. What a treat. So what do you think? Could Keir Starmer achieve the political miracles achieved by Tony Blair? Is Starmer Tony Blair 2.0? Let's get the view of Sue in Cheshire. Good evening, Sue. Just loading Sue up. She's putting her sherry down. Hi, Sue. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. You?
Very well. Great to have you back on the programme. And can I just say you look very gorgeous in your jewellery there. Do you think that Keir Starmer is as solid gold as your necklace?
No, my necklace isn't solid gold for a start. Starmer is no Tony Blair too. He's such a boring speaker. He can't speak to an audience. He's more designed really to put people to sleep than inspire them. His policies are very weak. No, he doesn't follow them up with any information about them. He doesn't think them through. Like getting rid of the Lords, he doesn't think about the implication that's got for the monarchy, or looking at the competition that would then arrive if they were all elected, the competition that would arrive then between the Commons and what is now the Lords or the Second Chamber. He doesn't think things through. And I don't believe that he can actually go from being a staunch supporter of Jeremy Corbyn and the far left to a quasi-conservative within 4 years. Everything he says now, he will not stand by. As soon as he gets into number 10, he'll do exactly the opposite. And in fact, he can't even remember what he said last week because he'll say the opposing thing this week to a statement he made last week. He's got a very, very short memory. And I don't think he's to be trusted at all.
However, Sue, do you agree with Alpesh that, notwithstanding your misgivings about his lack of charisma, that it's all over bar the fighting, that Starmer wins the next election anyway?
Not necessarily. I think if Rishi Sunak gets rid of the vote and if he sorts out the Northern Ireland Protocol, and then you actually look, I mean, I could give you a list of people or, groups of people in the country who, even though nobody really likes either of the major parties at the moment, neither of them trust either of them, but there are some good reasons for voting Conservative for each, for instance, like women. Women should vote Conservative because Labour won't protect their safe spaces. Labour don't even know what a woman is, let alone anything else. Council taxpayers should vote Conservative because then we can get rid of all these stupid fines for going into the middle of cities and things, because Conservative councils aren't doing that in the main. It's all Labour councils. Aspirational parents, for instance, should vote Conservative because the Labour want to take away the charity status, despite most of these schools doing charitable things and putting VAT on, which will cause havoc in the state sector. But again, he hasn't looked through, hasn't seen it through to the conclusions that could happen. So I don't think it's all over at all, by any means.
All right. Well, there you go. Sue dropping some truth bombs. Let's bring Fergus in Woolwich into the conversation. It's worth mentioning, of course, that many people take the view that the Tories have made a Horlicks of the economy and that it's Labour's turn for power. And also, Keir Starmer would defend himself in terms of those so-called U-turns, given the fact that when he ran for leader of the Labour Party all those years ago, we didn't have the pandemic, we didn't have the war in Ukraine. Let's speak to Fergus. Fergus, is Keir Starmer the new Tony Blair? And can he achieve what Blair achieved, which is to get moderate voters and Tory voters to vote Labour?
I think what he really is Tony Blair 0.5, basically. Sue, she covered so many things so well, Sue, just now, thinking, yeah, and there's this, and there's this, and there's this. You think of the Iraq War, that was Tony Blair wanting to be a world leader. A lot of the terrorism around the world comes out from that war. And he said when he was interviewed in the House of Commons, well, at least we got rid of that one man. Yeah, they also killed about 20,000. It was a horrible war. The weapons of mass destruction didn't exist. The man who was the most important investigator of that ended up mysteriously dead in the woods. Whether it was suicide or murder, I don't know, but he was dead in the woods. And Tony Blair was education, education, and education. Now, I train people in public speaking and presentation, including some very senior executives and some fairly senior politicians, and I can't tell you who. But Keir Starmer, yes, exactly, the devil eyes, yeah, which was a clever thing. He still won. Why? Because all he had against him was John Major. It's very easy to beat John Major if you're Tony Blair, but it was all this, we can take socialism into the mainstream, into capitalism, as opposed to Neil Kinnock. But Starmer, the problem with Starmer, I think, and Sue's hit it, he can't even say what a woman is or isn't. And he was behind Corbyn massively for years, and suddenly he isn't. And someone says, I'm not being rude here, can a woman have a penis? Well, that's not a fair question. No, it probably is quite a fair question, actually. If he can't even be that forthright, Tony Blair probably would be and get away with it. But Starmer is, well, you can tell he's a solicitor or barrister. And as I'm sure you know, because I've heard it on your show, Hansard, they're not allowed to put Sir Keir Starmer in Hansard. What? He doesn't want his knighthood listed in the daily words of the parliament of this country. That is seriously unpleasant, I think, anyway.
I think you're right. I think it's churlish. Let's bring Sue back and Alpesh, my Saturday sidekick, entrepreneur and broadcaster. And Alpesh, the million-dollar question is, setting aside Keir Starmer's perceived lack of charisma, is the platform, are Labour's policies enough to attract Conservative voters? Has he occupied the political centre ground in terms of his manifesto?
I read the document. I think it's about 2 pages long, and they know that they've just got to keep it light on detail so they don't fall into any traps because they're so far ahead. And you can see what they're trying to do, get to that centre ground. I didn't find it persuasive.
I mean, is there anything in that 5-point plan that will scare the horses, as it were, and worry aspirational people?
No, it's pretty bland. I mean, what are you going to disagree with? Energy security? No. Safer streets? Oh, no, I want more unsafe streets. Oh,
well, you say energy security, though, but this is the drive for Britain to go net zero by 2030 and for the government to invest taxpayers' billions in flaky renewables. Does that not worry you as an entrepreneur, Alpesh?
There's no detail to it. And both sides, both parties, major parties have agreed that they're going to get to net zero.
But Alpesh, do you want the government starting businesses? I think people that run businesses should be people like you, not bloody ministers.
I love the Margaret Thatcher phrase, which is the business of government is not the government of business, and never a truer word. And I find myself on most evenings watching old videos of not Margaret Thatcher, just in case people think I've got some kind of kink, but actually Ronald Reagan. And there were many policies from that era which need to be brought back, which is just stay the heck out of the way of the people and businesses and be as light touch as possible. Now we've got to an era where we think, and Labour believe this, that they're the solution and answer to everything. Well, how about just don't fiddle and just say we're actually going to try and stay out of the way of people and let them get on with it. By the way, we've got 47% of our energy from renewables already. We're already pretty good on the renewable side, and thank God we've got it from there, because given what's happening with Russia and Ukraine, we weren't as affected as we could have been were we reliant on, God forbid, Russian oil.
Fergus in Woolwich and Sue in Cheshire will be back in the next part of the show. We're also going to hear later in the programme from Andrew in Dudley, Susan in South Wales and others. We're going to discuss a lot of issues with Puffin, the publishers doing a crashing U-turn on their decision to alter the wording of Roald Dahl's works. Does this mean the woke agenda is in decline? And with food shortages already threatening our struggling nation, should we be growing more of our own food? Should we go for food independence? But next up, with the SNP leadership candidate Kate Forbes taking a beating from the media for her faith-motivated takes on conscience issues, I'll be back with Sue and Fergus to ask, has Britain become an anti-Christian country? And why aren't politicians allowed to be Christians anymore? See you in 3.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel. Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Keir.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions are, those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one.
Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like
Absolutely.
on Jubes and Keir. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway, Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView, Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Phil. Welcome back to Mark Dolan tonight. We start with the People's Hour, in which I'm taking your video calls. And as the SNP leadership race hots up, the practising Christian candidate, Kate Forbes, has faced a backlash for her belief that marriage is between a man and a woman and that she is against sex before marriage. Standing by her religious views has seen her fall behind in the competition to replace Nicola Sturgeon. But why should her Christian faith be a disadvantage? Has Britain become anti-Christian? And why can't politicians be Christians anymore? Let's go back to Fergus in Woolwich. Fergus, what's your view? I'm bothered about how this young woman has been treated.
So am I, very much so. I mean, we both love Calvin on your show. And he's
Calvin Robinson.
Calvin Robinson is fantastic. I'm always writing to him and he's thanking me for the likes and everything on Twitter. He's a bright bloke and he said the same thing. Namely, his belief is about the gay marriage and the children out of wedlock. He's got his beliefs which are personal and it's his feeling, which is fine. I've been fanatical student of religion for a very long time, and I'm very, very old. And if you go back to the Crusades, it was the Christians who went to the Holy Land and attacked the Jews and the Muslims, and that started the whole crisis that's been out there. And it's a big story, a long story. But Christianity was strong, and then it suddenly got this weakness. And the worst person you can talk about is Martin Luther. Not Martin Luther King, Martin Luther, who first of all loved the peasants, then he hated the peasants, then he loved the Jews, then he hated the Jews. And a lot of the Nazis were from Lutheranism, which is horrible. And Protestantism has been a sort of melange. Like Henry VIII used it very nicely to get rid of his wife and get a new wife. That was handy. He also ripped all the cathedrals down, stole all the gold and spent it on himself. Yeah, so yeah, that's Protestantism. But please don't attack everybody who's a Christian just for being a Christian, because nobody, like this lady in Scotland, nobody would attack a Muslim like they've attacked her. They wouldn't. They'd say, OK, you've got these beliefs, many of which in Islam, Muhammad was a great bloke. I loved what he taught. But a lot of the Islamist things are horrible. Women are treated really badly. He was looked after by his wife, and he had a very nice life working hard on his writings and his thinkings while she earned money. And most Muslims know about his two wives who supported him. And so mainstream Islam is not anti-woman, but the Islamists are. And then suddenly Christianity is being attacked for what? Because she doesn't believe in gays? Well, OK, a lot of people, I don't care. I don't care who's gay or not gay. I really don't. And I don't care who's trans and isn't trans. It's got nothing to do with me. It's not my life. Don't attack this woman for being honest about her Christianity. That really irritates me. Leave her alone. If she's going to be good for the great, at least she's being honest.
Indeed, as you talk about Islamism, that's not the same as Islam. As you say, Islamism might include ISIS and the Taliban. Sue, in Cheshire, why is it such a risky strategy for politicians to be Christians in a Christian country?
Well, it shouldn't be, because I think, Kate did actually say that, she wouldn't have voted, but she wouldn't change anything now. She'd go with a sort of majority vote. And I think perhaps the SNP don't like the idea of having an honest politician in their ranks, because it's not well known that there are any or many honest politicians. And I don't think Britain is anti-Christian, but I do think that the left is anti-Christian, and they push a lot of this hate, really, of religion. I think all religions, let me put it out the front at the beginning that I am an atheist, so I've got no axe to grind with religion at all. But I think all religions should have the same respect as each other. I think they all have to realise we have no blasphemy laws in this country, so the ones who are from Islam, can't go around saying you're blaspheming Mohammed, because we don't have blasphemous laws here. And they also ought to realise and actually be thankful that in Britain they have the freedom of religion, but not a supremacy of religion. And I think, people ought to be given their respect. If you're not religious, I don't see why religious people should give you a load of stick because of the things you say about religion. But I think poor old Kate, I think, it's a change to see somebody who's honest. And I'd like to see more people like it.
Let's keep Sue. Let's bring Fergus back into the conversation, and Alpesh Patel, who is my Saturday sidekick, entrepreneur and political commentator. Alpesh, why is it such a crime to be a Christian politician in 2023?
Well, I think Britain's lost its confidence. What is wrong? Now, look, I'm a child of immigrants. I was born in Leeds, but my parents weren't. So I'm going to speak as if I'm an outsider for a minute. What is wrong with you people? It used to be the case that you would sing out loud proudly. And did those feet in ancient times walk upon England's mountains green? You believed that Christ came to this hallowed land, the UK, to England. Now it's as if, oh no, we're a bit embarrassed if, oh God, oh no, we've got to stay away from Jesus and all of that. Mahatma Gandhi said, if all Christians behaved like Jesus, the whole world would be Christian. I think that's a good thing to aspire to, and I speak as a Hindu. I've read, because I had to at school, and I got straight A's on this, in my religious studies, Matthew, Mark, as well. I can quote you the Beatitudes, and I can quote you a chapter and verse from Luke as well. The only thing in there is love. It's the only thing I can find. Well, OK, no. He's a bit angry with the scribes, the Pharisees, and the moneylenders, and we'll deal with the bankers later, and we don't like them still to this day. But other than that, what do you think this is if it's not a Christian country? When you think Easter is about bunnies, you think Christmas is about a fat bloke going down the chimney? No, they're religious holidays. They're marked. The king is defender of the faith. I know, as a Hindu, I'm pleased when he says informally, defender of all faiths, but he is defender of the faith. There's a stability to it. There's something I know. And by the way, if you think you Christians have got it bad for the anti-Christian feelings, you should try being Hindu on social media. The stuff I get, it's you idol-worshipping, elephant-bowing, cow piss-drinking, infidel, convert. And by the way, that's not from Christians. Christians are the most politest trolls. All they ever say to me is, turn to Jesus, it will save your soul. And I just give them a little love heart back. I love that. They are the most politest. They're not even trolls. I get that from other groups. But from the Christians, they're the loveliest people on social media when they're sort of, I must say, they're not even trolls. So, yes, it's a Christian country. So what?
Fergus, brief final word.
I've never met a Hindu I didn't like or a Sikh I didn't like. I've met some JWs who come to my doorstep. I say, I'm sorry, I'm Buddhist. And they go, oh, sorry. And they run away. That closes it down for me because I have studied all of them. And, yeah, everything Alpesh said was right. Everything Sue said was right. And, of course, you're saying everything right because you're Mark. What can I say?
Can't argue with that. Look, the SNP, clearly the grassroots have an issue with some of what Kate Forbes has said. It works against their progressive agenda. The SNP want to include gay people who want to be married in the eyes of God. What Kate said goes against that. So it's all about opinions. I don't agree with it, but that is the view of many north of the border. What do you think, Mark, at gbnews.uk? Coming up next in the People's Hour, should Britain be growing more of its own food after reports of shortages that could last for months? But before that, does the screeching U-turn by Roald Dahl's publishers over modifying potentially offensive elements of his classic books mean that the woke agenda is in decline? We'll be asking Andrew in Dudley and Susan in Wales. See you shortly.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
There's a guy who went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. B, I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Welcome back to Mark Dolan tonight and the People's Hour. Don't forget, after 9, all your favourite elements of the show. My big opinion. There is an agenda to take meat off your plate and to send the nation plant-based. Well, if you think you're taking my steak, you can burger off. After 10, in my Take at 10, I'll be dealing with Prince Harry, who, the papers report, wants an apology if he's going to appear at the King's coronation celebrations. If anyone is apologising, it should be that right royal whinger. Plus the big question, my all-star panel and tomorrow's papers. But first, it's your video calls in the People's Hour. Now, Puffin, the publishers of Roald Dahl's popular books, including Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and Matilda, have performed an astonishing U-turn following the rewriting of the author's classic books to make them more politically correct, or supposedly less offensive. They'll now publish the original version of the book as well as the updated version. Even the Queen Consort Camilla stepped into the row, suggesting that writers must have freedom of expression and that censorship is a bad thing. Good on her. So does this U-turn suggest that wokism, or extreme political correctness, is now in decline and that common sense is beginning to prevail? Well, let's speak to the voice of common sense. It's Andrew in Dudley. Hi, Andrew.
Hello there, Mark. How you doing? All right?
I'm very well. Good to have you back on the show. If memory serves, you are a former school teacher.
No, sadly not. No, I'm an actual salesman that sells steel. I don't know where you got that from, Mark.
Well, I think I know what it is. You look like a professor.
Oh, thank you very much. I'll take that as the compliment it's meant.
Andrew, forgive me for forgetting your entire CV, and clearly you've worked in a very noble industry. What do you think about this U-turn by this company? Is it good news for common sense?
It is. It's actually a hooray for common sense and a kick in the teeth for wokism. Wokism is just out of control at the moment, in my opinion. There's just so much of it about. I mean, this decision by Puffin to rewrite those classic books by Roald Dahl was just outrageous to me. I just couldn't get my head around it. You know, what's gone wrong with the world when you start to rewrite the work of one of the greatest children's authors of the 20th century?
And rewrite his work, Andrew, after his sad passing. He's not even here to defend his output.
Yeah, I mean, he must be rolling in his grave. It's just ridiculous. The whole thing backfired on Puffin. I'm sure they realised as soon as they announced this that they had made the wrong decision entirely. The reaction from the public was almost instantaneous, you know, and they had to backpedal more or less straight away and say that, in actual fact, we're not going to do this. We're going to leave it the way it is and the way it's meant to be. I mean, taking words out like fat and ugly. I mean, Augustus Gloop was enormously fat in the original book, and then they decided he would just be enormous. And then in Fantastic Mr. Fox, you've got the terrible black tractors, and now they are becoming, or were going to become, brutal-looking monsters. I mean, these words are totally different words to that written by Roald Dahl.
Andrew, I know you've got to take Class 4B in just a couple of minutes, but don't go anywhere because Susan is in South Wales. Now, Susan, great to have you back on the show. Is this proof that if we stand up to this nonsense, we can win?
I think so. Thank you for inviting me back, Mark.
Pleasure.
I think at last some very important person that's got the ear of the nation has started the backlash, and that's Queen Camilla. It's not just about changing words in books. It's actually a war that's going on in the country on our ways, our traditions, our language. And your lovely gentleman guest said that the country's lost confidence. Well, it's hardly surprising because the amount of things we're being attacked for. And basically, we are being told, you are wrong. You are wrong in the way you speak. You are wrong in the way you live. Everything about you is wrong. And we keep being bashed over the head with it. And it has to stop. And we have to start to fight back. And I'm pleased that Queen Camilla did actually say what she said. We've got a kind of enemy within that's kind of sneaking along like a horrible snake. And I think it might be coming out to the universities, and we're having stuff come from America. And if we're not careful, we are going to end up just being frightened to death to open our mouths. I mean, we are having statues pulled down and told our history is all wrong and what horrible people we are. No, we're not. We're nice people. We're kind. We welcome everybody. But please stop telling us that our ways are wrong. They're not. You have a choice. Accept our ways. Stop trying to change them, because we've been living for a long, long time, and we've been going along very well with the words that we're using, the language we're speaking, our traditions and our ways. So just accept them. And the other thing that I object to as well that happened is our historical figures that were living historical figures. And what the phrase I'm going to use now, this is a perfect example. I'm not sure whether I am using the right phrase, but we had Anne Boleyn, played by, now I'm not sure whether I can say black actress, an actress of colour, I don't know. Now to me that is very, very wrong, because she wasn't a woman of colour, she was white, and she was a white historical figure. And I would love to see the reaction if they made a film about Nelson Mandela and Ewan McGregor played the part, because that's the same thing. And that's another thing. They're trying to change our history. They're trying to make us ashamed of the British Empire. Whether you agreed with what the British Empire did or not is really not the point. It's the fact that we achieved it. It was a great achievement by the British nation. And now we're being bashed on the head saying that we were horrible people and we shouldn't have done it. So it's not just about changing words. What do they think we're doing? Bashing people on the head and saying, oh, you're ugly, oh, you're fat. No, we're not. We know our own language. We know our manners. We know how to use our words. And I find it, they say, oh, it's offending people. You're offending me because you're telling me I don't know how to use my own language. Yeah. And we've got to stop it, and that's the point.
I think that comes from the heart, and very eloquent there, Susan. Let's bring Andrew back into this, and Alpesh Patel, who is my Saturday sidekick, entrepreneur and political commentator. Alpesh, your reaction to what Andrew and Susan have had to say?
I'm going to be a bit of a black sheep on that. See what I did there?
Nicely done.
Well, it triggers...
You'll get cancelled for that.
It triggers the wokies. And I love triggering them and playing with... They're so easy to play with. You know, they will want... We talked about the Bible earlier. They will want trigger warnings on the Bible soon because it's offensive to Romans, for instance. I tell you one way in which... to keep them busy. Nursery rhymes, Bar Black Sheep. Remember a few years ago, that was actually a thing. It just keeps them occupied whilst they're doing their knitting degree or whatever it is they do. The other one is, so I was watching Thomas the Tank Engine and the Fat Controller. Let's not forget that. And that was written by a reverend, so again...
Well, can I just say that the controller is on the Atkins diet and he's now slim controller?
He's not. I saw him last week, mate. I don't know what you're saying. So there's that. The other thing to keep them occupied, you know, and as I say, they're a bit sort of low on the IQ bar, and we mentioned churches before. I could take any group of wokies and drum that rabble into attacking anything. Take churches, for instance. If you want Christianity to unify people, you just point out to them they've got icons of a Jewish person being tortured who's also a prophet of Islam. They'll love it because they'll march in front of the church. They'll say, "Oh my God, it's anti-Semitic and Islamophobic, this image of Christ." You can manipulate their simple little minds to do anything, which is really the point I want to make, which is most of the time we should ignore them, except when they get to literature. Then yes, we want to push back, and Queen Camilla had to step in. But most of the 90% of the time, it's a case of just meh.
Starve them of the publicity. Well, we won't be doing that with Andrew or Susan or Alpesh because they're back in the next part. I'll be asking, in the wake of food shortages, which are threatening to sweep across our already struggling and hungry nation, should we do more to grow our own vegetables? And should we stop eating food that's out of season? We'll talk about the British food industry next. See you shortly.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion, and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even some ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me,
Lawrence Fox on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Mark Dolan tonight. At 9 o'clock, there is a concerted effort to turn Britain plant-based. If you think you're having my steak, you can burger off. At 10 o'clock in my Take at 10, I'll be dealing with Prince Harry, who wants an apology if he's going to go to the King's coronation. Well, if anyone should be apologising, it's him. Welcome back to the People's Hour with me, Mark Dolan. Unless you've been living under a rock, you'll be aware that Britain's supermarket shelves have been distinctly lacking in fresh fruit and vegetables in recent weeks. Given the fact that we import so much and eat things like strawberries and tomatoes out of season, should we be making a concerted effort to be food independent and grow more of our own produce? Let's get the view of Susan in South Wales. Susan, what do you think? Have you got a cabbage patch?
No, I've got a beanstalk from last year because I grow an awful lot of my own beans. We do need to grow more of our own food because we are importing an awful lot. In 2021, we imported 10.46 billion worth of fruit and veg. There are obviously seasonal produce that we can't produce here, so we're always going to have to import food such as bananas. I mean, you know, never in a million years would we ever grow bananas here. But I do think the government should start to support our farmers. I mean, the horticultural sector, it wasn't included in the government support scheme for energy-intensive industries, which is surprising because this time of the year, obviously, they need to use the greenhouses to grow the tomatoes that we, in certain areas, we haven't got. We normally import in the winter 95% of our tomatoes, and they come from Spain and Morocco, and apparently they've had bad weather. That's why there's a shortage. We also import a lot of tomatoes from the Netherlands and we grow some here. But because of high energy costs, they've cut down on the produce. That's the reason why there are some shortages. But that's the business side of it. But I would like to say to everybody out there, buy yourself some runner beans and some tomatoes and try and grow your own. If you've done that, you probably do it every year like I do. I was very lucky. I was brought up with a grandfather that had a wonderful garden. He had an orchard and he had a massive piece of very, very good fertile soil, and he grew, well, everything you could think of, potatoes, onions, cabbages, and he'd got real green fingers. And from a very early age, I started to get interested in doing it. I used to have my own little patch and grow my own little...
Well, I think that's brilliant. I must say, I'd love to see your beanstalk at some point, Susan. Let's speak to Andrew about this as well. Stick around, Susan. Andrew, it's quite shocking, really, the statistics around this. In 2020, the UK imported 46% of the food it consumed. 93% of domestic consumption of fresh vegetables was fulfilled by domestic and European production. We've got to grow our own gear, haven't we? And there's no excuse not to, given the fact that we've got apples in Kent, we've got potatoes in Suffolk, you name it.
Well, before we start, Mark, may I ask you a personal question?
Anything.
Have you got half a pound of tomatoes and a cucumber spare?
I do. I've got them hidden in a very secret place, and I'll send them over to you. Where are you? You're just in Dudley. Yeah, I reckon they won't have spoiled by the time they get there.
That's let's hope not, as I don't like squash tomatoes. But to be serious, I've tried to grow my own fruit and veg for a couple of years running now. And it's very time consuming. You have to be very patient as well. They don't just happen, you just got to nurture it all, and it's all got to work properly. So you've got to have a bit of time on your hands to grow your own stuff. But it is very rewarding if at the end of it you've got some tomatoes and you've got some runner beans, and they always taste better than you can get out the supermarket. But point taken there, actually, Mark, that we do expect a lot of groceries and vegetables and fruits all the way through the year now. We need lettuces in December and fruits that are not usually available in the winter. We're very demanding, and that demand has obviously outstripped supply at the moment, which has caused the supermarket shelves to be empty.
Briefly, Andrew, do you think we should stop eating out of season? So we should stop eating tomatoes and strawberries in December?
Well, when I was a kid, you couldn't find strawberries in December. So you just had to do without them. And if you can't get them, you can't get them. And that's it, So, yes, perhaps we ought to get our minds straight and look towards eating the right things at the right time of year.
It wouldn't hurt. I might start a cookery show on GB News. I might get you to help me with that, Andrew. You can hang on to my tomatoes. Let's keep Andrew and Susan. Let's bring Alpesh Patel back in, my Saturday sidekick. Alpesh, the clock's against us, but a lot of people are saying this is the fault of Brexit. Is that true?
I tell you, no. I tell you what, it's the fault of the original Brexit, and let me explain. Like the majority of your viewers, my favourite cuisine is Indian, being Indian myself, and obviously the Brits love a bit of Indian food. It's your own fault. You lost the empire. What do you want me to say? You love our food, and you can't get... That was the original Brexit when you left, or were eased out, let me put it that way.
But Brexit 2.0 in 2016, and when it finally happened in 2020, that's not the issue, you don't think?
Well, some of the data points to it being difficult to get Europeans, Eastern Europeans in particular, they say, to pick the crops and some of the fruit. We're only about 18% self-sufficient, according to government figures, when it comes to fruit. The good news is Britain is 100% self-sufficient in barley, so you can drink yourself silly and not worry about food security.
Now you're talking. Can I thank the brilliant Alpesh Patel, my Saturday sidekick? He will certainly be returning in the near future. Entrepreneur and broadcaster, political commentator. Also, 4 brilliant broadcasters who also happen to be viewers of and listeners to the show. Susan in South Wales, Sue in Cheshire, Andrew in Dudley, not a school teacher, and Fergus in Woolwich. Andrew's not a school teacher, but he taught me a thing or two tonight. Folks, we've got a really busy couple of hours coming up. In my take at 10, I'll be dealing with Prince Harry, who wants an apology if he's going to turn up at the coronation. Well, he's the one that should be apologising. But next, in my big opinion, there are dark forces at work that want to turn your meal plant-based. I'm going to tell them to burger off. See you in 3.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farrow.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
He's the king of breakfast TV, and he's back. Eamon Holmes, back on the TV with me this morning.
Even remember my name.
I know, it's been 4 months. You have holy water by your bed?
Oh, yes.
Oh,
already to bless.
Yeah. Oh, Eamon. Oh.
Why do you not believe anything I say?
Eamon Holmes back on GB News Breakfast at 6 a.m.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store? You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
It is 9 o'clock. Welcome to Mark Dolan Tonight. What a busy 2 hours to come. In my big opinion, there is a concerted long-term effort to make us all go plant-based. Anyone that wants to take meat off our plates can burger off. In the big question, I'll be asking, is digital ID a step too far? And in the news agenda with my panel, have Brits lost faith in their GP services? Plus tomorrow's papers, live and uninterrupted, 10 minutes earlier than everyone else at 10:20, right through until 11. And in my take at 10, sparks will fly. We got fireworks. Prince Harry says he wants an apology if he's going to attend the King's coronation. If anything, it's this disloyal crybaby who should be saying sorry. That's my take at 10. Lots to get through, but next, the headlines with Ray Addison.
Thanks, Mark. Here's the latest. Rishi Sunak says he's giving everything to achieve a new deal over the Northern Ireland Protocol by the end of this weekend. Speaking to the Sunday Times, the Prime Minister said he's hopeful of a positive outcome with the European Union. Describing it as unfinished business, he said it's vital to ensure a return to power sharing in the province. The comments come after Ireland's Taoiseach Leo Varadkar said an agreement was possible but not guaranteed in the coming days. Most members of the G20 have condemned the war in Ukraine, except for China and Russia, who refused to sign a joint declaration. It comes as Ukraine's president says he plans to meet China's Xi Jinping after Beijing set out a peace plan for the two countries. Volodymyr Zelensky says it would be beneficial for security around the world. Russian citizens living in Britain have staged a protest outside of the Russian embassy in London over their country's invasion of Ukraine. It comes a day after the one-year anniversary of the start of President Putin's incursion. The widower of poisoned dissident Alexander Litvinenko, who was there, said she was proud of the protesters.
I'm very proud to see this big crowd of Russian people, a lot of young people. Maybe never went to this kind of protest, but I saw their faces and they've been all very loud to say how they're against the war, how they support Ukraine, how they hate Putin.
Well, hundreds have gathered in County Tyrone earlier to demand an end to violence in Northern Ireland after the attempted murder of an off-duty policeman. Detective Chief Inspector John Caldwell was shot outside a sports centre on Wednesday. He remains in critical condition. 5 suspects have been arrested. Detectives saying that the incident is being treated as terror-related and could be connected to the new IRA. And a 3.7 magnitude earthquake was felt in South Wales last night. The British Geological Survey saying that it hit Bryn Mawr near Crickhow just before midnight, with the tremor felt as far away as Cardiff. Residents on social media described being woken up to their whole house shaking. We're on TV, online and on DAB+ radio. This is GB News. Back now to Mark Dolan.
What do you think of newsreader Ray Addison's haircut? He thinks it's too short. I think they did a brilliant job. Welcome to Mark Dolan Tonight. In my big opinion, there is a concerted long-term effort to make us all go plant-based. Anyone that wants to take meat off our plates can burger off. In the big question, I'll be asking, is digital ID a step too far? And in the news agenda with my panel, have Brits lost faith in their GP services? Do you know the name of your GP? Do you feel confident you'll get an appointment when you call them up? Do they even answer the phone? That's the big question. With me throughout the show, reacting to the big stories of the day. We've pulled out all the stops tonight for my superstar panel. We have journalist and broadcaster Linda Jubilee, best-selling author and former royal editor of The Sun newspaper Duncan Larkham, and political commentator and campaigner Anna McGovern. Now, I want to hear from you throughout the show. The best bit of the programme is when you get in touch, mark@gbnews.uk. And this show has a golden rule. We don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it. It is Saturday night, so let's have a debate and let's have some fun along the way. Get the kettle on or pop something cold and fizzy in the fridge. And let's have some big debates, big guests, and always big opinions. Let's start with this one. If you thought Cambridge University is where the clever people are, maybe you should think again. Students there have voted to support a transition to a solely vegan menu across its catering services. It's ironic that undergraduates at one of the most revered seats of education on the planet haven't done their homework. Surely higher education is about assembling the facts, gathering data, and reaching an informed conclusion. Did they not see the rather distressing report suggesting that children raised on a vegan diet were, on average, 3 centimetres shorter than those who eat meat? Their bones were also smaller and not as strong, putting the children at risk of fractures or osteoporosis in later life. The study by University College London's Great Ormond Street Institute of Child Health said parents must be aware of the risks of vegan diets. The authors said vegan children should be given extra supplements like vitamin B12 and vitamin D to reduce potentially long-term health consequences of being raised on plant only. Not exactly a ringing endorsement, is it? Have the students of Cambridge University not reflected on the air miles intrinsically linked to a plant-based diet, with ultra-processed, meat-free foods made in vast factories, packaged in plastic and shipped around the world? Did it not come to their attention that plant-based requires vast monocrop agriculture, in which millions of hectares of diverse land are stripped and razed to the ground to accommodate mile after mile of corn, wheat or soy? But how can these crops possibly be cultivated given the industrial nature by which they're farmed? After all, livestock graze on land. Cows, sheep, lamb, goats, they all poo and wee on the ground, enriching the soil and watering it at the same time. It's called regenerative farming, and we've had it for thousands of years. Most British beef is farmed in this way, which makes it more of a carbon win than first meets the eye. In Britain, pretty much all beef cows graze on grass in the summer and are fed hay, silage or straw in the winter. And some graze outdoors all year long. Very brave. Perhaps now is the moment to mention my good friend, Jeremy Clarkson, in whose brilliant TV show Clarkson's Farm, it was revealed this week that a full-size cow contains within her up to 1,000 portions of meat, as well as the bones, which can be ground up and used as a natural soil nutrient. Blood and other unwanted tissue can be used for dog and cat food, and the hide can be used for leather. You get a lot of bang for your buck from Daisy the cow, and all she needs is grass. Meanwhile, mass production plant-based crops can only be sustained with millions of litres of chemical fertilisers and pesticides. Doesn't sound very healthy or environmental to me. What about the nutrient value of plant-based? Are meat-free burgers and vegetarian sausages, are they really the answer, considering that they are largely composed of water, industrial seed oils and soy? Is that going to power the intellectual demands of these Cambridge students? Good luck with that. Particularly given the fact that plant-based protein is less bioavailable, which means it's not as easily absorbed as animal products. And alternative proteins like pea protein do not contain the full complement of so-called amino acids. In other words, they're not a complete protein. Air miles, shorter kids, inadequate nutrition, inadequate protein. But it doesn't stop there. Because if you go plant-based, you're likely going to be eating a vast amount more of carbohydrates. Bread, pasta, rice, starchy vegetables, and sugar to make much of this vegan rubbish edible. Why is this a problem? Well, because excessive carbohydrate consumption has been linked by the likes of NHS GP Dr. David Unwin to obesity and type 2 diabetes. It astonishes me how unthinking the students at Cambridge University are, and how illiberal they are too. What happens if one student wants choice and wants to opt for what, in my view, would be the healthy option of some cheese, some eggs, some yoghurt, meat or fish? A lot of this is politics, not health. We live in an era where public institutions seek nothing more than to signal their virtue, in this case, at the expense of students and their health. Now, I've got friends and viewers and listeners who are vegan, and they love it. Good luck to you, no problem. But I'm sorry, in my view, the health case for plant-based does not stack up. And I worry for the future of children and our young people who are being increasingly coerced into this deeply inadequate form of nutrition. We've been eating meat for millennia, and if we pursue this plant-based experiment, I predict the next generation will be sicker, fatter, sadder, more tired, and frankly, malnourished. Perhaps that's the way the state and the pharmaceutical industry would like it. Who knows? But there is a clear agenda among administrators and politicians and corporations to stop us eating meat based upon debatable science. And after the horror of vaccine mandates, once again the authorities are trying to decide what goes into your body, this time via our dinner plate. Just say no. Those seeking to enforce a plant-based diet are silly sausages. I've got beef with them, and frankly, they can burger off. I'm here to defend cows, because plant-based is utter bollocks. What's your view? The students who voted for this would argue the planet is heating up and animal farming has a big carbon footprint. They would say eating red meat is bad for you. They'd report the health benefits from a vegan diet, including overcoming allergies, sometimes losing weight, and feeling the best they've ever felt. It's not a view I share, but it's all about opinions. So what's yours? Mark at gbnews.uk. Reacting to the big stories of the day, my all-star panel, journalist and broadcaster Linda Jubilee, best-selling author and former royal editor of The Sun newspaper, Duncan Larkham, and political campaigner and political commentator as well, Anna McGovern. Anna, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
What's your reaction to this? I think that this case of Cambridge University is not isolated. I think they're trying to make the country meat-free.
absolutely. And this is a direction that many of the universities are going in. And I believe it was in 2016 where the University of Cambridge actually banned, I believe it was lamb as well, from the menu. So this is just continuing the trend. And the University of Stirling as well are removing all animal products from their catering by 2025. And more universities will be participating in this. What I have to say is, who are you to tell me what I can eat or put in my body? There are so many mineral benefits to eating meat, and I don't believe that the university should be dictating what we have in our diet. There are so many benefits to me, and I quite frankly think this is ludicrous.
Duncan Larkham, would you let anyone tamper with your T-bone?
Absolutely not. No, I mean, I'm not a vegetarian. I'm certainly not a vegan, and I don't like the thought of having to. I accidentally went into a vegan restaurant once with a photographer because we were starving hungry. We sat down, we ate the food. We were the only customers in there. It was a long time ago. And the owners came over and engaged us in conversation just when we realised we were accidentally in a vegan restaurant. So we had to be very polite and very nice. But I'm afraid when we left, we felt guilty, but we went straight down the road and found a Burger King.
And now, Linda, I don't want to beat up on the vegans. I've got so many vegan viewers and listeners. Many of them have told me that they've never felt better. They love it. It's something about which many people are passionate. But for me, this is a question of choice. And the students at Cambridge University now do not have that privilege.
Exactly. That's exactly the point. And that was key in what you've just said now, is that the students there don't have a choice. Now, I've got no beef, if you like, with people going on a vegan-based diet. In fact, my daughter graduated with a first from the University of Edinburgh, and she was almost exclusively vegetarian for the entire 4 years she was there. I've got another friend who actually has completely put her Crohn's disease at bay by sticking to a vegan-based diet. It's a matter of common sense, first of all, in how you eat. There's perfectly healthy vegan diets that you can stick to, but you can also eat a great meat-based diet. I'm a meat lover. I like nothing more than that T-bone steak. In fact, a nice Côte de Boeuf with the bone marrow poured on top. I'm your girl. But the fact of the matter is, you need to give people choice. Those students need a choice, and I think there's far too much virtue signalling going on in this debate. What we need is a common-sense attitude to it.
Your reaction, Mark, at gbnews.uk. Are you willing to go plant-based to save the planet? Do you accept the science on that one? Is something else that we need to debate. Mark at gbnews.uk. Coming up in the news agenda with my excellent panel, have we lost faith in our GP service? Do you know the name of your GP? Do you have a relationship? If you call the GP practice, do you have any confidence that they'll give you an appointment or even answer the phone? We'll talk about GPs in crisis before 10. But next in the big question, is digital ID a step too far? And how do you feel about Tony Blair still having an influence on this country? That's next.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the people's channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison? I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions are, those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, a big reaction to my big opinion, Mark at gbnews.uk. How about this from Dennis? Good evening, Dennis. How are you? Thanks very much for your email. First email of the show. Dennis said, Mark, my GP told me to eat plenty of red meat, and he was in his mid-80s when he passed away. I'm now pushing that number myself, and I'm relatively fit and healthy. Vive les roast beef, says Dennis. Dennis, I've got no doubt you're the picture of health, and I'm sure a handsome devil with it. How about this? That's quite good. Richard, I could tell you a vegan joke, but it would be too cheesy. Blimey, I thought I did the gags. How about this from Jason? Mark, you can't get certain proteins from vegan food that are essential for your brain activity and only available in red meat. Mark, I totally agree with you. We're being told that low-fat foods are good for us. But they're making us fat. History tells us that quality meat is good for us, pure lard and natural fat is good for us. We are animals. Quality and purity is key. The more something is forced and processed, the worse it is for us. Great show as always. Well, great email there from Brigitte in South Devon. What a nice part of the world. However, Alex isn't happy. Mark, I thought... oh, no, it's... well, I'm not sure what Alex means by this, but I'll read it and let you decide. Alex has said, I thought unis were supposed to be places of free think, not climate change theory indoctrination centres. I think Alex there supporting some of the elements of my big opinion. But if you disagree with my big opinion, do let me know, Mark at gbnews.uk. This programme is a haven of free speech, and I will defend it to the death. Now, former... Oh, do you want to do... Yes, sorry, Sam. You know what? I'm glad Director Sam's concentrating. He's a bit of a perfectionist, so let's do one of those jingle things. You can't get the presenters these days. Now, former Labour Prime Minister Tony Blair and former Conservative Party leader William Hague have come together to jointly advocate for the UK to roll out digital IDs. Writing in the Times newspaper, they called for a digital ID for every citizen, a national health infrastructure that uses data to improve care and keep costs down, and sovereign AI systems backed up by supercomputing capabilities. In other words, everything that you need to know about our bodies and our lives, all on a microchip. Now, digital IDs are a controversial technology that allow people to prove their identity using information stored on an app. Despite small-scale uses, digital IDs are not universally accepted in the country in the same way that passports and driver's licences are. Blair and Hague are keen to change this, arguing that a government-approved digital ID card scheme would allow easier access to public services. But is this kind of technology a step too far and a threat to our basic freedoms and civil liberties? To debate this, we're hoping to be joined by political pundit and writer James Melville. But first, a good friend of the show, Labour councillor Fatima Kamara. Hi, Fatima.
Hi, good evening, Mark. How are you doing?
I'm very well. Good to have you back on the show. Do we really want to have these digital IDs? It sounds like something out of George Orwell's 1984. I'm not sure I want the state knowing that much about me.
I think, Mark, what I would say is, in your intro, you mentioned about Tony Blair and also Haig putting this report forward in terms of recommendation. And what we must really just kind of stress, it's a report. It's a proposal. I think it's not set in stone, definitely because of the issues that we've had as the UK in terms of taking on board the notion of a digital national ID. The history behind it can also actually easily glare people up to think, no, this is not what I want, and rightfully so. I believe that with everything, there has to be due process and intelligence that needs to go with it. I believe that the report that Tony Blair and Haig have put together it's not set in stone. It's open for discussions. There are a lot of things that we need to think about in terms of GDPR. There are lots of things motions that would need to go through to Parliament and things like that. The only thing that I would have to add to that is that, there's certainly, we all do have digital footprint, that we willingly, one way or the other, giving out details, on social media or such like, which we have voluntarily given out our information to. I think the way that we're moving in terms of, keeping track of numbers of, for example, illegal immigration, people coming into the country, and also security of the nation. I think there's certainly a place for us to have a database that would hold certain information so we're able to plan, we're able to have the right system and infrastructures in place, both in the UK and also on a local level as well. In terms of the report, I would just say it's a report, it's not set in stone, but obviously I do understand how that makes people feel.
OK, well, let's bring in political pundit and writer, a man that's won a legion of fans in the course of the pandemic, speaking up for our freedoms. It's James Melville. We're having a little bit of trouble with the line to James. James, I hope you haven't been got at by the deep state.
Not yet, no. But this is Cornwall, so, all kinds of things of communication problems will happen in Cornwall.
What do you think about these digital IDs? Fatima Kamara says it's only a consultation, and really it's just a convenient way of having your medical information and your benefits and a couple of other important NHS details all in one place.
Whenever I hear the words security, safety and convenience, I question it. I'm not some sort of technological Luddite. I think, technology is the way the world moves forward. But I do have a problem when the likes of Tony Blair, who's effectively been wanging on about digital ID for 20 years, then appears, now unelected Tony Blair, to say that this is in our best interests. The problem with this is, where does it stop? I'm not saying we end up like China with social credit systems, but it does raise the possibility of a gateway towards that if we end up having a system of digital ID that is wrapped around a number of different areas, whether that be, we've seen it before with vaccine passports, that was effectively digital ID and illiberal discrimination, and we're seeing it with central bank digital currencies. There's pilot schemes around the world on that, and there's consultation documents within the UK government on that. Digital ID can be useful in certain things, but not when it's a data harvest or it raises the prospect of government control and also surveillance. And so therefore, if you go down this path, it has to be scrutinised. We have to hold the government's feet to the fire, and there has to be certain restrictions from our side. And what I would say is that maybe based on the bad government, why are the government asking these questions to us? We own the government, they don't own us. So perhaps the best form of digital ID would be us to get digital ID to monitor the behaviour of our politicians and government so we know where our tax money is actually being spent.
The worry I've got, Fatima, is the potential for state tyranny over the citizen. James just touched on it. If we'd had these digital IDs during the pandemic, we could have properly enforced a two-tier society, the vaccinated and the unvaccinated. Things could have reached Canadian proportions, with people having their bank accounts frozen for being critical of lockdowns or not having the jab. That's the problem with this technology.
Mark, I think that I'm just preempting that I don't think that would be the case, but also not saying that that cannot happen. If we look at our neighboring country, as in Estonia, when if you're born in Estonia, you're actually given a national ID, and that works with you right through. Do you know what I mean? It helps with the planning. It helps with so many things that needs to happen in terms of getting the information online, getting them registered for prescription, and all of that. It makes it a seamless process. And I take on board the sort of anxieties and also the notion that why would someone want to know everything about me? Do you know what I mean? About what I do, what I eat, where I go, my passport details and all of that. But I do also believe that segments of these are already registered willingly by ourselves. But I think what the most important thing is actually the public having the say to actually dictate the sort of information that would be on this card, and if that comes to that point. But also, that is why with everything else, there's consultation. It's not imposed on us, as people are saying. I want to believe that there's going to be an aspect of consultation, and the public would be able to have a say to say, this is what we want, and this is what, we don't want our details, all of our details in just one national ID that carries everything that we carry around with us just because the government says so.
OK, James Melville, final thoughts on this, because I think if this technology was in the hands of someone like Fatima Kamara, we'd be fine, because Fatima has a conscience and an intellect and some empathy. But I'm worried about this kind of technology falling into the hands of a future authoritarian regime.
I agree. I mean, we've been down this path before with the COVID response. It started with 3 weeks to flatten the curve, and we end up with vaccine passports around the auspice of digital ID. And also it's about the communities who will be disregarded by digital ID. A large percentage of our elderly population are not online. So what happens to them? It's impossible to enforce across the whole country. I agree there's certain aspects of digital ID that make everyone's life easier. But there's certain aspects of digital ID that make people's life restricted. And I do worry, as I said at the start, whenever government, under the auspice of consultation, say that it's for our convenience, that raises a lot of questions. We're currently getting a lot of legislation that's bubbling under the radar that are around digital ID. And so most of the public don't even know about this. I've got a major concern for central bank digital currencies. That when we lose, for instance, aspects of financial freedom by financial transaction, that's a major, major problem, and the government should have no control over that. Our government is fundamentally there to serve us and free us up. But at the moment, we're getting governments around the world, it's not just in the UK, who seem to be using the wraparound of digital ID by claiming it's for our safety and our convenience. But actually, we don't know where that will end up. It's very vague at the moment. It's very ambiguous. I've read the documentation in terms of consultation exercises around digital ID and central bank digital currencies. But it does open a gateway to other problems. What else will they bolt hole into this? And so we have to be very, very careful that we don't end up in a situation. I'm not saying we end up like China, but it does offer the potential of a gateway towards that predicament. And that is not in keeping with what I think the UK is about, a liberal and free society.
James, thank you for joining us live from Cornwall. Enjoy a nice bubbly pint of Sharp's Atlantic Pale Ale on me. And may I also thank Labour councillor, regular on Mark Dolan tonight, Fatima Kamara. A fascinating debate. Your reaction, digital ID, convenient or state tyranny? Mark at gbnews.uk. In my take at 10, I'll be dealing with Prince Harry, who wants an apology. Well, if anyone should apologise, it's him. Plus the papers with full panel reaction from 10:20 right through until 11. And don't forget, very excited about this, we're going to discuss tattoos. Are they vulgar? Have they become too normalised? We'll be speaking to Britain's most tattooed man before 10. But next in the news agenda, have Brits lost faith in their local GP? See you in 3.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions. I have no time for cultural totalitarianism. We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Now, we're all aware of the never-ending crisis in the NHS, but one aspect that's frequently overlooked is the patient-doctor relationship, or more precisely, the complete lack of it. It used to be that you could call up your local surgery and make an appointment on the day to see your family doctor, someone who hopefully knew you well and that you could trust. Now it's barely possible to get an appointment at all. So, have we as a nation lost faith in our GPs? Linda?
Well, personally, I haven't. I love my GP. I go there. The last time I went there, which was for a routine checkup, I mean, I had to actually stop her talking because she was taking up too much time and she was giving me so much attention. I said, I think we can draw a halt now because I've got somewhere else to go. I've got to leave. So, very, very conscientious. That's just an anecdotal thing. But the kind of survey we're talking about, I think we do have to lift the lid on this and say that who really conducted the underlying data on which it was based. And it is a firm of personal injury lawyers. Now, once you know that, you know how to approach the kind of information that's being pushed forward, because you know, as well as I know, that there are lies, damned lies, and some statistics. And in fact, when you look at these statistics in the cold light of day, they're not really as bad as the Daily Mail is making out.
Well, no, that's right. This is a story in the Daily Mail suggesting that our GP services are in a parlous state. The doctor will see you now, but you probably don't want them to do. An interactive map lays bare all 260 of England's worst performing practices that are inadequate or require improvement?
But they are in the minority, and the quotes from the NHS and the Royal College of General Practitioners both say that actually most of these surgeries are performing very well. And the fact of the matter is, I think there is cause for concern, and the reason there's cause for concern is because we've got an ageing population, and it's very difficult to deal with huge numbers of people in their older years that are leaning on GPs. Now, we do have to do something about that because it's an almost perfect storm, because GPs' numbers are going right down now because they're retiring early. You know, the personal tax allowance was frozen. It really wasn't worth financially. A lot of them carrying on. They retired. They left the profession. They've gone to Australia. They're doing this. They're doing that. They've had a hard time in the pandemic, and we haven't got enough GPs. So there is cause for concern, but I think this survey is a little bit misleading.
No, I appreciate your critical judgment on this, which is what makes you a great journalist. But this would, and I know it's only anecdotal, but this would contradict the hundreds of emails I get from viewers about how they can't get a GP appointment. I mean, obviously, during the pandemic, the NHS became very focused on COVID. I think that was a mistake, but obviously, you know, they were in a difficult situation at the time. But people have no confidence that they'll get an appointment or that they'll get seen, and that's the problem.
You see, the problem is that anecdotally, the last time I rang for an appointment, they said, "Can you come tomorrow?" And I said, "Actually, I can't. I thought it would take a week. It didn't. It took 24 hours. But I probably am in a fairly good situation. But I can only take, as I find, I can only repeat. If we're talking about anecdotal evidence, I can only say that I don't have a problem.
Yeah. Anna?
I mean, I think you're very fortunate because I think there's many people who actually aren't able to access their GP. Or even if you try and call the GP, they don't always answer. Like another, I guess, anecdotal example for myself, when over the Christmas period, I had strep A, which was going around, and I developed a very bad muscle strain in my chest to the point where I was in debilitating pain. It was very bad, and I was really to a point struggling to breathe. I called my GP, and I got through to the reception, and without asking me anything about myself, my age, date of birth, anything like that, if I had any health conditions, they immediately said, "Well, I can give you this appointment, but you will be taken away for an emergency." And like for me, I am in good health. I'm a young person, but imagine if an elderly person had rang like that, and then they're shut down immediately and told, "Well, actually, you're not a priority. You're not an emergency. You're taking away from someone else who might need that urgent care." And I think for the GPs, they're very overrun. There's a massive backlog. There's many people who are waiting for appointments. So a lot of them they're very stressed, and not everyone can be seen. So I think for many people, it really resonates and they can't access their GPs.
Duncan, there's also that question of the patient-GP relationship, which I feel has diminished in recent years.
Yeah, I mean, I can remember as a kid growing up, Dr. McDonald Brown was our family doctor.
Did he keep a bottle of whiskey in the bottom drawer?
I was probably a bit too young to experience that whiskey, but he was that notion of a family doctor.
Yeah.
It has disappeared, and of course it's disappeared for reasons that are quite practical. You know, there are more people now, and the NHS is under a hell of a lot more pressure because a lot more is expected of it. But I think we need to be very careful to look at figures like this, where worse performing GP surgeries, because actually it's about why they're performing so badly.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine there's a doctor in the NHS that would actually have signed up for a situation where a patient that needs them is going to have to wait 2, 3, 4 weeks before they can actually come in and be treated or even just assessed. And what happens time and time again now is people are just told, get yourself to A&E.
Yeah.
And that ain't a solution either.
No.
If anyone has to go to A&E, it's a traumatic experience just to go there.
Yeah. And it leads to more problems because the more overloaded A&E is, the more we've got problems in hospitals because they're not, and it goes back to the ageing population again, they're not able to discharge patients often quickly enough because there are no spaces in care homes.
Yeah, for sure, sure. Hospitals are full of people that shouldn't really be in there by rights. I mean, Duncan, the issue is, and I always speak up for doctors and nurses, I think we all would, especially given what they've been through in the last 3 years. But I do wonder whether public anger is such that it threatens the relationship between not just doctor and patient, but really our view of the NHS overall, because, you know, the GP is the first point of contact for a patient. And if you feel you can't even get in on kind of, you know, ground zero, then you've got a problem. Access. I mean, we pay through the nose for the NHS, and yet we can't get the service in many cases.
We do, and when you see it in such a state, and these sorts of bits of research just lay that bare, you start to think maybe there is a very strong argument for charging people that don't turn up to the appointments that they finally get. Those sorts of things, you know. But again, free at entry, it's a political hot potato. So the common sense options, I would say, are not even considered in this particular wonderful NHS that no one can criticise.
Well, and I think as well the NHS is being taken over by many bureaucratic forces. There are people they care more about building the rainbow roads than actually caring about the patients who are in need of urgent care. And I think the whole system is broken and needs to be fixed.
OK, well, we put out a Twitter poll before the programme. Have the public lost trust in their GP services? Are they dismayed? Have they lost faith? I think that was the key word. So I'll let you guess. What percentage do you think, Linda, are dissatisfied with their GP service from a non-scientific GB News poll?
And not anything to do with my own personal view.
No.
I think probably 70%.
You're 70%, Duncan? It's like play your cards right. Higher or lower?
Yeah, OK, I'm going to go lower than 70%.
Lower than 70?
Yeah,
I'm going to say 75.
OK, well, the money and the points and the speedboat goes to Anna McGovern.
Oh, there you go.
Because here are the results.
I'm not surprised.
82% of GB News viewers have said that they have, let's lose that strap, have Brits lost faith in their GPs, their GP services? And that's really bad news for the NHS, and it must be addressed as a matter of urgency. I'm sure plenty of you, like Linda, have a good service, and we should acknowledge the great work that many GPs do. It's a tough gig, but too many are falling short. Now, coming up in the next hour, in my Take at 10, Prince Harry wants an apology in return for appearing at the King's coronation celebrations. Well, I think if anyone should be apologising, it's Harry himself. That's my Take at 10, and we'll get the view of my brilliant panellists tonight. Duncan Larkham, who is the former royal editor of The Sun newspaper, best-selling author, and Prince Harry's biographer, no less. We've got the papers live from 10:20 to 11 o'clock with full panel reaction. But next, are tattoos becoming too normalised? Are they vulgar? We'll be speaking to Britain's most tattooed man. See you shortly.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion, and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even some ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
Have Brits lost faith in their GP services? This from Bridget. Good evening, Bridget. How are you? Romney Marsh, nice part of the world. Bridget says, Mark, if I was still working as a reporter, I could write really good copy regarding NHS GPs and waste of money. We can't get to see our GP since the start of COVID. I had an email from the surgery telling me that unless I was under 2, pregnant or at the end of life, I would not see the doctor. Our A&E is overworked with patients not able to see a GP. As an ex-reporter while in hospital, I asked doctors and nurses if they could see a GP. Most said no. I also have a lot of information about the waste of money if only someone was interested. Well, Bridget, I'm interested, and why don't you drop me an email, mark@gbnews.uk, and I'll have a look at that. Mark, you must have had the same doctor as me, Dr. Diamond in, well, I won't say which location, don't want to get that doctor in trouble, who kept his whiskey in his drawer. Them days are long gone. Don't worry, he's long gone too. John, thank you for that. Mine was an Irishman called Dr. Morton. Red-faced, but a heart of gold. Listen, let's crack on now and let's talk about tattoos. For some, tattoos are an extension of their personality, a way to express themselves, or even a sentimental reminder of a person or a special time in their life. But others are not on board with the trend, viewing them as offensive, distasteful, and even a barrier to employment. Interesting story in this week's Mail newspaper saying that midlifers, people in their 40s and 50s, are now getting tattoos. So have we normalised them? Are they vulgar, or is it a lovely form of expression? Let us now speak to King of Inkland, Britain's most tattooed man and a good friend of mine. Hi, King.
How are you, Mark? You good?
I'm very well. You're looking very spiffing. I'm amazed that your jacket is not destroying the television signal.
Oh, wow, it's very Austin Powers, isn't it? Like, can I say
It is gorgeous. It suits you well. Thank you dressing up for the show. You look very well. What do you think about people in their 40s and 50s having tattoos, the midlifers? What does that tell you about the culture of tattooing, King?
Well, I'm a midlifer myself now. I'm 43, but I've been getting them since I was 16 years old. So I think generally, if you decide to get them, you normally know what you want and stuff. And people normally regret their first tattoo, although their first tattoo can also be the start of an addictive journey. I think David Dimbleby and some other people have had tattoos when in their 60s. So it's not uncommon for people to start late. I've got a pensioner friend that I've been on television with. He started in his 50s, started on his face, to be fair, in his 50s. And now he's covered like myself. So I think generally it's down to the individual, but they are still quite Marmite. You either like them or you don't, you know.
Indeed. I mean, look, it's becoming the norm, isn't it?
What's normal, like, especially in this woke world that we live in. For myself, I only have to walk down the street with my friends and people stare at me that have never seen me before. Even when I go abroad, I get very mixed reactions. But then again, I am at the extreme end of tattooing, where it's on my face and it's in people's face. I think it depends on the individual, what they've got, where they've got it as well. And then when it can offend people is if people have like the offensive style tattoos, but you don't see much of that these days. Really, to be fair, it's more the tattooists are doing art, you know, doing designs that people want.
I like people to be themselves, and if you feel good in a tattoo, then good luck to you. What has motivated your tattoos over the years?
So I was inspired from my dad had a tattoo. It was a military tattoo, to be fair, with his first wife's name in. He asked me when I was in my 20s about blacking it out. He'd already had it blacked out because he married my mum, his second wife, and then he wanted it re-blacked out for like an anniversary. So I gave him advice where to go get it blacked out. My uncle had a couple, So a couple of family members, and then Maori, really. When I was out in Australia, I saw Maori people. I thought it was amazing. At the age of 9, half the legal age to be tattooed. But a lot of people get tattooed now, a lot younger, with parents' consent, which I still think the skin needs to develop and you need to be of a certain age. But yeah, certain people are getting tattooed a lot younger as well, as a lot older.
King, have you ever been discriminated against as a result of your inking? Have you had trouble getting jobs, or has it affected you romantically or socially?
I've had mixed reactions in the workplace, as well as like venues, nightclubs and bars. Sydney a few years ago, down in the CBD area, which is their central business district, bars and restaurants. I was okay in restaurants, but some bars and clubs wouldn't allow me in, and the security guards knew who I were. They said, we know who you are. We said, but we've got a policy, we can't let you in. So I approached the management of the places, and they said, come back. You know, they checked out I wasn't gang associated, and said, come back the following night. So that was quite nice. In the workplace, I've been moved from one end to another when management have come round, like senior management from like down south have come up to the offices, done visits, and they said they were having to move around, and they've moved me from one end of the office to another. I was like one of the only people to be moved. So, yeah, things like that, really.
How does that make you feel?
Yeah, it's not very good, but I had a job. I'm very lucky, and this has opened doors for me, as well as, yeah, I'm not going to pop up in Downton Abbey or that kind of show, but like get me in EastEnders. You know, I know Danny Dyer's just gone out of it, but like, you know, there's certain roles in acting and other things that open up, you know. Definitely.
And probably modelling and things like that. King, what is the difference between somebody that gets a small tattoo on their wrist, perhaps a rose on their shoulder, and then what you've had done, which includes your eyes? What is the difference?
Okay, so small tattoos, yet again, fairly cosmetic and the norm. It also comes down to people's lifestyle, what they want in general. And when I first started, I went into a tattoo studio, very old school, traditional tattoo studio, where you walk in, all the pictures are on the wall. The industry's kind of changed now, where people work with it. They know what they want. They'll take in a mobile phone. I think when I was 16, I didn't have a mobile phone, or if I did, it was a big Motorola or something the size of a brick. So, yeah, all the pictures were on the wall. I saw a British Bulldog with a Union Jack. I thought, oh, that's nice. And that's but I didn't know this was going to be the start of a journey that become my lifestyle, you know. And that, for me, is lifestyle. That's the difference between a small rose or a small love heart. Or then again, that first tattoo they might regret it, or it might be the start of an addiction for some people.
Yeah, and it makes you happy. You feel good, right?
Yeah, it's for me. There are a lot of friends that I've got that in the modelling world that are not happy with how they look, and they have cosmetic surgery, and they've actually been diagnosed with body dysmorphia. For me, I've not been diagnosed with body dysmorphia, but I'm very happy with how I look and expressing my artwork. It's my personal art on my body. So
indeed, did you ever risk? Did you risk your eyes with the inking of your eyes? Your eyeballs have been tattooed. Was that a risk to your sight?
It's a very high-risk procedure. It's a surgical, so I'm uncomfortable with it also being known as eyeball tattooing, Mark. Obviously, in the tattoo community, it is known as that, and medically. My optician was a bit worried when I went to my optician to tell him I was going to get one eye done, as you can probably imagine. But he gave me a full eye test, and I was okay. Because the reason why I went for an eye test, it's not going to stop a problem when they do the procedure, but you're going to get checked to see that you haven't got no health problems with your eyes. And then I had the procedure, and then I went back to my optician about 4 weeks later, and he'd never dealt with it before. And he said, we're going to check your eyes every year now. So, I mean, I see you're wearing glasses. A lot of people should have an eye test every 2 years, because they don't just check your eyesight, they check for cancers and other things as well. So,
well, listen, you look like a picture of health. You've always been a good sport. You do your own thing. You're an individual. You're a bit of a rebel, and good luck to you. We'll catch up soon. King of Inkland, Britain's most tattooed man. Britain's most annoying man next. Prince Harry is the subject of my take at 10. Don't go anywhere.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
Is the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
He's the king of breakfast TV, and he's back.
Eamon Holmes, back on the TV with me this morning.
Even remember my name.
I know, it's been 4 months. You have holy water by your bed?
Oh, yes. Already to bless.
Oh, Eamon. Oh.
Why do you not believe anything I say?
Eamon Holmes back on GB News Breakfast at 6 a.m.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
It's 10 o'clock. Producer Christina runs a tight ship. Welcome to Mark Dolan tonight. In my take at 10, in just a moment, Prince Harry says he wants an apology if he's going to attend the King's coronation. If anything, it's this disloyal crybaby who should be saying sorry. Plus, we've got tomorrow's papers, Sunday papers, of course, live and uninterrupted, 10 minutes earlier than everyone else at 10:20 right through until 11. With full panel reaction. Lots to get through, including Prince Harry. I'm not pulling my punches, but first the headlines with GB News royalty, Ray Addison.
Thank you, Mark. Here's the latest. Rishi Sunak says he's giving everything to achieve a new deal over the Northern Ireland Protocol by the end of this weekend. Speaking to the Sunday Times, the Prime Minister said he's hopeful of a positive outcome with the European Union, describing it as unfinished business. He said it's vital to ensure a return to power sharing in the province. The comments come after Ireland's Taoiseach, Leo Varadkar, said an agreement was possible but not guaranteed in the coming days. Well, most members of the G20 have condemned the war in Ukraine, except for China and Russia, who refused to sign a joint declaration. It comes as Ukraine's president says he plans to meet China's Xi Jinping after Beijing set out a peace plan for the two countries. Volodymyr Zelensky says it would be beneficial for security around the world. Russian citizens living here in Britain have staged a protest outside of the Russian embassy in London against their country's invasion of Ukraine. It comes a day after the one-year anniversary of the start of President Putin's incursion. The widower of poisoned dissident Alexander Litvinenko, who was there, said she was proud of the protesters.
I'm very proud to see this big crowd
of Russian people. A lot of young people maybe never went to this kind of protest, but I saw their faces, and they've been all very loud to say how they're against the war, how they support Ukraine, how they hate Putin.
Hundreds gathered in County Tyrone earlier to demand an end to violence in Northern Ireland after the attempted murder of an off-duty policeman. Detective Chief Inspector John Caldwell was shot outside a sports centre on Wednesday. He remains in critical condition. 5 suspects have been arrested. Detectives say that the incident is being treated as terror-related and could be connected to the new IRA. On TV, online and on DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Back now to Mark Dolan Tonight.
My thanks to Ray Addison, who returns in an hour's time. Welcome to Mark Dolan Tonight. In my take at 10 in just a moment, Prince Harry says he wants an apology if he's going to attend the King's coronation. Well, if anything, it's this disloyal crybaby who should be saying sorry. Plus, we've got tomorrow's papers live and uninterrupted 10 minutes earlier than everyone else at 10:20, right through until 11. Starting with the political editor of both the Sunday Mirror and the Sunday People, Nigel Nelson, and from 10:30, my all-star panel, who include journalist and broadcaster Linda Jubilee, best-selling author and former royal editor of The Sun, Duncan Larkham, and political campaigner and commentator Anna McGovern. I want to hear from you throughout the show, Mark at gbnews.uk. Lots to get through over the next hour or so. And let's start with my take at 10. The world's least happy millionaire, the Ginger Windsor himself, Prince Harry, reportedly wants an apology if he's going to attend the King's coronation in May. The arrogance of this delusional spoiled brat knows no bounds. If an apology is in order, it's from this self-indulgent crybaby. Will he apologise for the undoubted stress and anxiety suffered by our late great Queen Elizabeth when news emerged, when she was alive, that he was going to write a tell-all book about a family and a monarchy to which Elizabeth devoted her entire life? Will Harry apologise to King Charles for criticising his qualities as a father, in spite of the fact that our king carried such a burden, raising 2 boys in the absence of their mother Diana, whilst shouldering the colossal responsibility of serving as the Prince of Wales? Will Harry apologise to his wider family for the lucrative book deal in which he sold them down the river for a few million quid by spilling the family secrets? Will Harry apologise for the podcasts, the TV chat show appearances, and that Oprah Winfrey non-interview, which was about as journalistic as a bowl of lettuce? Will Harry apologise to the British press and papers like the Daily Mail for suggesting that they're somehow racist, even though they greeted the news of Meghan's arrival with utter glee, believing that they had found their new Diana? Not to mention the 100% positive blanket coverage of their multi-million-pound wedding, attended by thousands of eager Brits. Will Harry apologise to his former colleagues in the military, whose lives he has endangered by bragging that he killed 25 Taliban operatives? Will Harry also apologise to other royals who now have a target on their back as a result of these flippant, reckless and ill-advised comments? Will Harry apologise to his own brother William for spelling out in such excruciating detail arguments, fights, disagreements and problems they've had together, and washing the family laundry in public? So what if your brother has decked you? You keep that in the family. And will Harry apologise for how William's wife, Kate, has been characterised at the hands of Harry and Meghan's PR machine? And last but not least, will Harry apologise to the British people for the reputational damage that his book and all of the interviews have done to this country globally. Not to mention the damage done to a royal family that most of the public have affection for, and a monarchy that most of the public support. Will Harry apologise for all of these things? If so, then I think there is a way back into the fold for this young man. But will an apology come? I wouldn't hold my breath. For this sulking aristocrat, sorry seems to be the hardest word. It's sad, so sad. What a sad, sad situation. What is your view? Harry's supporters would argue that the couple were the victims of a witch hunt which saw them forced out of Britain against their will, and that the royal family neglected Meghan's mental health whilst a serving royal. They would argue that quarters of the press have showed prejudice against Meghan Markle, potentially because of her skin colour. And they would argue that the royals were guilty of similar prejudice, and they would argue that the podcast and the book are simply the couple's opportunity to tell their side of the story and put the record straight. Well, I don't buy that, not for 1 second. But what do you think? Mark at gbnews.uk. Do you have sympathy for the couple? Should King Charles and the Prince of Wales, Prince William, apologise to Harry? Reacting to my take at 10 are the fantastic journalist Linda Jubilee, former royal editor of The Sun, and he's now got a wider journalistic brief, brilliant best-selling author as well, Duncan Larkham, and political campaigner and commentator Anna McGovern. Duncan, this is a subject close to your own heart. You've moved on from covering exclusively royal duties as a journalist, but you are Prince Harry's biographer. Do you think that he deserves an apology?
I think if Prince Harry's holding out for an apology, he's going to have an incredibly long wait. And at the end of his interview with Tom Bradbury the week that his book came out, he said that the ball was now in the court of his father, Charles, and his brother, William. And I think everyone took a bit of a deep inhalation of disbelief there. So you've written a book, you've exposed the secrets that the family's code, number one code is that you don't break rank. And you certainly don't go off and sign lucrative deals in America to fund your lifestyle. And yet, if we believe this to be the case, Harry still wants an apology. I mean, it's like having a temper tantrum as a kid, pulling off the curtains, kicking the furniture over, smashing glasses, and then going up to Mummy and saying, Mummy, I want you to tell me you're sorry. It's sadly mistaken, I think.
Duncan, is the appetite, the demand for this apology motivated by the apology that the palace made in relation to Lady Susan Hussey, who was perceived to have spoken inappropriately in the context of a British woman of African heritage? Hussey asking where she really came from. The palace apologised. Is that what has stoked this anger over in Cupertino, California?
I think it's hard to tell. I mean, I've covered Harry since he was a teenager, and frankly, I think what we've seen from him with the book and in the last couple of months, really, it's almost as though we're watching someone who's 75% through some really expensive therapy. And, of course, anyone who's been anywhere near therapy for mental health or other issues, addiction, etc., will know that the moment that you've actually crossed that bridge and got into a position of recovery is when you are actually going out and giving those apologies to the people that you've held resentments towards. It's basic stuff. Harry has set himself up as a very well-paid guru of mental health, and yet I see no evidence that he's ready or in a position to actually sit down and have a sensible conversation with his brother and his father.
You are his biographer, and you were the royal editor of The Sun, which is one of the biggest royal jobs in the country. How long would you say have you known Prince Harry?
I got to know Harry. I was privileged enough to get to know Harry in the days when he had finished at Eton and he was waiting to join the military at Sandhurst. It was a privilege for me, but of course in that period he punched a photographer, he wore a Nazi outfit, a story that I wrote. And he got in all sorts of different scrapes around the world, which in his book he goes back to and almost brushes them off as sort of the I don't know. I mean, he really hasn't. His book really could have been a whole list of apologies himself for the behaviour that he's displayed and the times that his own family that he criticised so viciously actually stuck up and put their necks on the line for him, because that happened.
Linda, do you believe you've also covered the royal brief in Fleet Street? What's your reaction to his demands for an apology, if they are true? That's what we're hearing. That's what's being reported.
Well, as you so clearly said, it's him that should be making the apology. The fact of the matter is, I've read the book cover to cover. I think it's well written. I think it's quite engrossing. But I also think it's very passive-aggressive. And it's passing the buck, page by page by page, just blaming other people. And he's continuing to do that now. I mean, it's incredible, really, when you think that he and Meg live in magnificent Montecito. They are living there in a very, very luxurious enclave in a world where 50,000 Ukrainians are said to have been killed. Nearly 200,000 Russians have been slaughtered. When 97% of the population in countries like Afghanistan and Yemen live below the poverty line, this whinge-a-thon carries on. I cannot understand why he can't get a grip and grow up.
But what do you really think, Linda? You're going to have to get off that fence. This show's all about opinions. Anna McGovern, you're not short of opinions. Do you have words of defence for Harry? Because the couple could argue that they've been badly treated by the British press. They need an apology from almost everyone in this country.
To be honest, I think a lot of this he's brought onto himself, and so has Meghan. I was involved with the royal family for several years through my campaigning work, and Prince William and Prince Harry, they set up the Royal Foundation Task Force for the protection of cyberbullying, did a lot of mental health work for children and young people, and I knew them through working in those task forces, and they came together for the Diana Award, which was set up in Princess Diana's memory. So it's such a shame, actually, because he used to do such incredible work for those people. It wasn't necessarily always reported. And now, all of a sudden, he's gone in this tirade against the royal family. And then to go ahead and say, oh, there's, witch hunts for him and Meghan, when you're putting yourself in that position, I think is completely ludicrous.
Tell me about the Harry that you reported on and knew after Eton, Duncan, and the Harry we've got now. What's happened to this guy?
Well, over the years, Harry, I think you have to see Harry in the context that most of the public did see him, and that was as a little boy, head bowed, following his mother's coffin on that tragic day, aged 12. And after that, there was a period where the press left him alone, and he carried on with his life in relative anonymity. And in that period, we know that he started to take cocaine. He slipped outside the back of pubs to lose his virginity. He hardly behaved himself in a way that perhaps a young prince should. But the public loved him more for that, because he had that vulnerability, and the public didn't want to attack, or didn't want to see Harry being attacked. What's tragically changed, I would argue, is that prince that people would literally forgive nearly anything for, actually the change came when he met Meghan, and the sympathy that Harry had. In the days when Harry never took himself too seriously, the pre-Meghan days, the public could swallow him. I think now, sadly and tragically, Harry is a nice guy. But I think tragically now, whatever has gone wrong with his PR machine, he's now the royal that he's right down in the bottom, challenging Prince Andrew in the unpopularity stakes. He used to be second only to the Queen. If that's the Meghan Markle effect, did he marry badly? Who knows?
Duncan Larkham is the author of Prince Harry, The Inside Story. It's a cracking read. Lots of truth bombs in there, lots of insight. And I read it during lockdown. There wasn't a huge amount else to do, but it's highly recommended. Do you think that Charles and King Charles and Prince of Wales, William, should apologise to Harry, or vice versa? Mark at gbnews.uk. We've got Sunday's papers next.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
Is the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions are, those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway,
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView, Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's coming up to 20 past 10. As always on a Saturday, we bring you the Sunday papers 10 minutes earlier than everyone else, from 10:20 right through until 11. So let's have a sneak peek at 2 of the front pages, starting with the Sunday Telegraph. And here's what they lead with. Sunak snubs Johnson over new Brexit deal. Rishi Sunak is poised to scrap Boris Johnson's Northern Ireland Protocol bill as part of his new deal with Brussels. The PM believes he has secured fundamental legal changes that render the bill, designed to give the government power to rip up parts of the protocol, no longer necessary as a bargaining chip. But in a sign of the growing rebellion against his deal, Steve Baker, the Northern Ireland minister and leading Brexiteer, was last night understood to be on resignation watch after being frozen out of negotiations. His allies said he'd been unhappy for some time and was prepared to walk if he's not convinced by the deal, which is expected to be announced as soon as Monday. Competition for school places at record high. And James Bond, here we go, folks. Here we go again. James Bond books edited to remove racist references. The Sunday Mirror, cracking front page and a very sad and moving one. Ukrainian boy begs for home in UK. Rishi, please reunite my family. A boy of 11 today begs Rishi Sunak to free him from war-torn Ukraine and reunite him with his father in Britain. This little boy's father is working in England as a builder. And it's quite a moving story, I've got to say, and represents the plight of thousands as the Home Office is hit by red tape. Those are 2 front pages. Let's get reaction now from the longest-serving political editor in the country, even though he looks about 30. It is Nigel Nelson. who is the political editor of both the Sunday Mirror and the People. And Nigel, an important human story on the front page of your paper tomorrow, the human impact of the war in Ukraine.
Yes, I think that it's very difficult for us living here to imagine what it must be to be an 11-year-old growing up in Ukraine at the moment. So what the Sunday Mirror has got is a chance to find out from somebody, Dmytro, who lives in southwestern Ukraine, exactly what it's like. He's written to Rishi Sunak because he wants to be reunited with his father over here, who he hasn't seen for 18 months. And what he talks about is just how awful the whole thing is, that where he would expect to go to school, he's spending his time in bomb shelters. He has to do his homework by candlelight because the electric keeps going off. And one of the most heartbreaking parts of his story is that his mother has stopped smiling. And all he wants is to be reunited over here with his father, who couldn't go back to Ukraine. He was a builder over here, as you just said, couldn't return to Ukraine, can't fight because he has a medical condition. And the problem is they've come up against the dead hand of the Home Office. And him and his mother are two of 9,400 Ukrainians who got somewhere to come to in Britain, but can't get the approval to get here. Now, you know, we've shown what a big-hearted nation we are. We've taken 165,000 Ukrainians in. And people are prepared to open their homes. There's a home for them in London. They just can't get here.
Indeed so. Props to the Sunday Mirror for running that story. The Sunday Telegraph, Sunak snubs Johnson over new Brexit deal. I know this features in your papers as well tomorrow, The People and The Mirror. First of all, what are you hearing, Nigel? Is a deal in the offing? Do we have a Brexit breakthrough?
I'm not sure whether we've got a breakthrough yet, because Number 10 are keeping incredibly quiet about exactly where we are with the deal. All they'll say is that Rishi Sunak is spending the weekend at Number 10 talking to various people. It feels like we're getting close. That certainly that the Irish Prime Minister said that we were nudging towards a conclusion. Whether that conclusion is actually going to come tomorrow, the day after, is difficult to know. We could have had an identical conversation at this time last week about this.
And I suppose the litmus test, the canary in the coal mine, is Steve Baker, who is a Northern Ireland minister and very keen Brexiteer, a leading member of the European Research Group of Eurosceptic MPs within the Tory party. If he stays, if he accepts this deal, Rishi's home and hosed, isn't he? But it's a big if.
Well, I think that more importantly, the DUP have got to accept the deal. And that'll be the real kind of litmus test about whether it's going to work. Now, Steve Baker is hugely important, obviously. The trouble about this deal is that what we're being warned by Whitehall sources is, look, not everyone's going to be happy with it, that they won't give everything everybody wants. The question then is what the Tory party do about it. Will they rebel against Rishi Sunak? Will they force Rishi Sunak to get the deal through the Commons with Labour votes, which would further split the Tory party? It's a real tricky tightrope for the Prime Minister to walk at the moment.
It is most definitely. Nigel, come and see us in the studio again very soon. Always love having you on the panel. Nigel Nelson is the Sunday Mirror, the political editor of both The Mirror and indeed The People. Catch up soon, Nigel. We've got more papers next with my panel, and you won't believe this story. Here we go again. James Bond books edited to remove racist references. You couldn't make it up. Ian Fleming's James Bond is being rewritten to be less offensive for the 21st century. Isn't the point of James Bond that he's uncultivated, that he's a bit of a drinker, a bit of a womanizer? Are we going to sanitise another iconic masculine hero? Surely not on my watch anyway. We'll get to that. We've got all of the other papers as well. Full panel reaction as well. Get your emails in, mark@gbnews.uk. It is the Sunday Papers next. Don't go anywhere.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions. I have no time for cultural totalitarianism. We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8". My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Well, a big reaction to my take at 10. Should King Charles and the Prince of Wales, William, apologise to Harry? Steve says, Mark, my feelings are currently neutral on Harry and Meghan. People will have wanted to know their side of the story. They've now made that clear. What they do next is how I will judge them. If they move to South Africa, for example, and live under a rock for the rest of their lives, I will respect that. Well, Steve, good luck with that. I wouldn't hold my breath. Oh, dear. How about this from Yvonne? They mocked the UK and Her Majesty with Meghan's insulting curtsy. Karma is a bitch, says Yvonne. There you go. Harsh words, but perhaps fair. How about this from Ken? Mark, the spare, which is a reference to Prince Harry and, of course, the name of his book, will come to the coronation, although an apology from the royal family will not be forthcoming. He will lie again to make out that the royal family have, in fact, given in to him. He cannot be trusted, no way. An excellent programme, says Ken. Well, thank you for your kind words, Ken. If you're enjoying the channel and if you're enjoying the show, tell your friends, tell your family, and let's change the world together. It's time for this. It is just gone 10:30. It's time for all of tomorrow's Sunday papers, hot off the press. Let's start with the Sunday Times, and they lead with the following. I'm the PM who will get Brexit done, says Sunak. Rishi Sunak tomorrow takes on the Eurosceptics in his party, insisting that the Brexit deal for Northern Ireland, which he's close to agreeing with the EU, will finally get the job done. The PM is expected to unveil his deal as early as Monday, with or without the explicit endorsement of the Democratic Unionist Party, the DUP, despite Boris Johnson and his allies claiming that the agreement risks civil war. In an appeal to his divided party, Sunak said that the proposed deal was not a threat to Brexit, but about making sure that Brexit works in every part of the United Kingdom. Speaking about the deal for the first time since details began to leak a month ago, the PM said, as someone who believes in Brexit, voted for Brexit, campaigned for Brexit, I want to demonstrate that Brexit works, and it works for every part of this country. There's unfinished business on Brexit, and I want to get the job done. It's a secret in Ukraine. The true death toll of the war remains unknown. And low-level crimes get zero charges. Police forces are failing to charge any suspects with low-level offences such as attempted burglary for months at a time. Overall, just 3% of reports of public threats, abuse or harassment, the third most commonly reported offence, led to someone being charged last year, down from 26% 8 years ago. Divided loyalties. The Princess of Wales, Kate, met injured players who are supported by the Welsh Rugby Charitable Trust ahead of today's Six Nations clash in Cardiff, which England won 2010. The Sunday Express. How about this? Crackdown on £40 million migrant lawyers. Activist lawyers suspected of stringing out asylum claims to pocket millions of pounds are facing a government crackdown. I think we'll caveat that with about bloody time. Princess of Wales cheers on England. And what about this? Our very own Eamon Holmes. Tax stress could have cost me my sight. That's an interview that Eamon Holmes has given the Sunday Express. Eamon, of course, back on Monday morning with Isabel. The Observer revealed 1 in 100 police faced criminal charges in 2022. And Sainsbury's returns as top Labour donor with a £2 million gift. That's David Sainsbury, a member of the Sainsbury family, not the company Sainsbury's, but somebody connected to the business. The Sunday Telegraph, Sunak snubs Johnson over new Brexit deal. PM faces a revolt as minister on resignation watch after being shut out of negotiations. That's referring to Steve Baker. Rishi Sunak is poised to scrap Boris Johnson's Northern Ireland Protocol bill as part of his new deal with Brussels. The PM believes he has the secured fundamental legal changes that are required to render the bill unnecessary, but in a sign of the growing rebellion against his deal. Steve Baker, the Northern Ireland minister and leading Brexiteer, was tonight understood to be on resignation watch after being frozen out of negotiations. His allies say he's been unhappy for some time and was prepared to walk if he's not convinced by the deal, which is expected to be announced as early as Monday. Competition for school places at record high. And here we go again, folks. James Bond books edited to remove racist references. Ian Fleming's James Bond novels have been rewritten to remove a number of racial references. All of the author's espionage thrillers, featuring 007 from Casino Royale to Octopussy, are to be reissued this spring to mark 70 years since the British spy first appeared on the page. The publication company that owns the rights commissioned a review by sensitivity readers. You heard me right. The Telegraph understands that a disclaimer accompanying the reissued texts will read, "This book was written at a time when terms and attitudes which might be considered offensive now were commonplace. A number of updates have been made to this edition whilst keeping as close as possible to the original text." OK. We'll cover that more in just a moment. The Sunday Mirror, Rishi, please reunite my family. A boy of 11 begs the Prime Minister to free him from war-torn Ukraine and reunite him with his father in the UK. And last but not least, the Daily Star Sunday. Devil worshippers get a cuddly makeover. Satanists, go woke or go to hell. Bake-off contests and inclusive T-shirts in recruitment drive. Devil worshippers have gone woke to attract new followers. They've changed their logo to become more family-friendly and are holding bake-off contests. What the hell? Well, there you go. Those are your front pages. What is more controversial now, being a Satanist or being a Christian within the SNP? You tell me. Let's get panel reaction to all of tomorrow's Sunday papers. We have journalist and broadcaster Linda Jubilee, best-selling author and journalist, former royal editor of The Sun newspaper, Duncan Larkham, and campaigner and political commentator Anna McGovern. Linda, can we have a look at this? I'm the PM who will get Brexit done, says Rishi Sunak. Meanwhile, in the Sunday Telegraph, Sunak snubs Johnson over new Brexit deal. Are we here on the verge of a Brexit breakthrough? Can we now just put a full stop on this and get on with our lives?
Well, I hope we can. But is it an actual breakthrough? That's what I'd like to know. I mean, I think we can inch forward. I think we can put it behind us. I wouldn't describe it as a breakthrough, but I think everyone is sick and tired of... In the great British public, I think everyone is sick and tired of this subject now. They just want an end to it.
Is Sunak within his rights to piss off the ERG and the DUP?
Well, it's his prerogative to do that. Whether he should do that is another question. But, I mean, I don't think you can make an omelette without cracking eggs at this point, and someone is going to have to be upset.
Yeah, what do you think about this? Many would say that unless it has the rubber stamp of the DUP and the likes of Steve Baker, who's Northern Ireland Minister, then this is a non-starter. What do you think, Duncan?
Well, it's an issue that simply doesn't want to go away. And I suppose, in a way, it's encouraging that Rishi Sunak is now putting this high up on an agenda. But again, it seems where we're at with the Northern Ireland Protocol is if we try one thing, it doesn't work, try another, it's stuck in all directions. So it's a huge challenge for Rishi Sunak and probably welcome that he's going to try.
I mean, is this the moment where he essentially chooses some sort of resolution, a deal, a compromise at the expense of the wishes of the DUP? Can he afford politically to not have their support?
Well, he has enough of a majority in the House of Parliament without the DUP. Which
it looks like
Theresa
Labour
May
will also
didn't have.
back this to some degree.
Yes.
We understand.
Yeah, and in the end of the day, it might just come down to simple arithmetic on the floor of the House like that, which is going to get us nowhere.
Anna McGovern.
Yes. I think he's trying to be bold. I think they know that they're kind of headed for electoral disaster. You know, as I think they know they're hitting the end of the road. And I think for Rishi Sunak, he's trying to maybe lead a new path, be different to Boris Johnson, which I think is why he's kind of going on that contention streak. And I think for them, they know that the next general election comes around, they probably don't have it in the bag. And I think they know Labour has a huge chance of getting into number 10.
So what, is this a scorched earth policy from Sunak then?
Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, to be honest, personally, I haven't seen Rishi Sunak. I don't know about the rest of you, but I don't feel like I've seen him too much in the... Like Liz Truss, when she was Prime Minister, she was everywhere. She was all over the media. But I feel like Sunak has taken a bit of a lower profile. I don't know if you guys would agree. But then I feel like with this, he's probably, he's making his mark. He's trying to make a stand. And people, I think they're sick of hearing about Brexit. They just want it done. So by putting forward something, saying we're going to do something different, we're going to get Brexit done, that might sway the tide in his eyes for the election and get more people backing him.
He's got to get something done because actually, as we head into a general election, there are two issues that people are going to care about. They're going to care about immigration and they are going to care about the cost of living. So he has to get this work done somehow.
Well, I just wonder whether it would, if he can get a deal across the line and if Eurosceptics will swallow it begrudgingly, it changes the narrative of his premiership into one in which he has statecraft, negotiating skills and essentially the ability to get the job done. You know, that this just changes the mood of his premiership, potentially.
Possibly, but do you really think that'll be a factor when people go into the polling booths in less than 2 years'
Does it not suggest... I mean, I agree it's not a priority for most people.
It just isn't.
But is the messaging not that this guy is competent? And isn't that going to be a big factor in the next election? Who would be the best Prime Minister?
I am sure that... politicians want charisma, they want integrity, they want gravitas, they want standing, and that is often what makes a difference when people tick the box when they get into the polling booth, and he wants to appear that way. But at the end of the day, people are going to really, really start feeling the pain if next winter is worse than this winter, and then we go straight into an election the following May.
Duncan Larkham, you're a Tory MP. No, you're not, don't panic. Imagine that you're a Tory MP.
I don't think they'd have me.
Perhaps...
And I wouldn't apply.
Well, listen, no, understandably. But imagine you're on the backbenches and you're in a marginal seat. but you're a Eurosceptic, you're ERG. Do you swallow this deal for the sake of party unity and just the blind hope that you'll get back in at the next election? Is this deal, which is going to be better than the current situation, I think that's clear, that it will be an improvement to the protocol, if not ideologically perfect. Is this a hill to die on for the Eurosceptics?
I think it's got the potential for that, but the oven-ready Brexit deal that I would presumably, as an MP in the Tory party, have got elected on last time, I think my constituents would now be rather frustrated with the fact that actually things are still not working as smoothly as we were promised, frankly, especially if you happen to be in Northern Ireland.
How about this? Low-level crimes get zero charges. Police forces are failing to charge any suspects with low-level offences, such as attempted burglary, for months at a time. Just 3% of reports of public threats, abuse or harassment led to someone being charged. Now, I am concerned about burglary. Attempted burglary, they call a low-level offence. Well, I'd beg to differ on that one, Linda.
No, because it's a crime that really matters to people.
For sure.
It's a crime that hits at their homes and therefore their hearts.
Well, this is it. I mean, don't we need a culture of intolerance, of zero tolerance to crime?
I think there is a culture of intolerance, but I do think there's a great deal of pressure on the police now about what they have to do each day. I mean, they have to act to support other agencies. In fact, they have to act in place of other agencies sometimes. It's now completely normal, for example, for a squad car to go out with a mental health nurse on board. They call them mental health cars.
Amazing.
And they're going out and they're doing this support in lots of other areas, and therefore they don't have the resources to deal with the nitty-gritty of the crimes that actually really matter to people.
Too right. Sunday Express, crackdown on migrant lawyers. Let's talk about this one, Anna McGovern. Activist lawyers suspected of stringing out asylum claims to pocket millions of pounds of taxpayers' cash are facing a government crackdown. About time.
Yes, and you know what? I think, especially immigration, this is going to be on the minds of many people. I think it's it has gone it's gone high. It's really high scale, and I think especially thinking ahead again to the next election, this will be something on people's minds because it has gone completely out of control, and the government aren't doing that much to actually put it under that control. So I think this is something that definitely will be a big priority.
OK, lots more from the papers. According to the Sunday Telegraph, James Bond goes woke. That's next.
First and foremost, I'm a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
Welcome back to Mark Dolan tonight and tomorrow's papers. This in the Sunday Telegraph. Here we go again. James Bond books edited to remove inappropriate or racist references. Duncan Larkham, we've just been through the Roald Dahl rewrites, which were irrational at best.
Sure.
Here we go again with James Bond.
Yeah, I mean, it's... Well, I'm not going to get on the anti-woke bandwagon, but it's hard not to, isn't it? I mean, these books were written at a time where culture and society was different, but you kind of... We know that, and we should almost celebrate that we know. One of Agatha Christie's books was changed to "And Then There Were None."
The title was changed 3 times of that book.
Wow. And I couldn't even say, or we couldn't even say on air, and rightfully so.
But
so there are
times the N word, is that right?
Yeah.
That's right, and I mean. There is some common sense that you have to apply to this. If there's something that is absolutely offensive, then change it. But I fear that people are kind of now scouring through old books like Roald Dahl and obviously James Bond and looking to be angry and offended for somebody else. And I think once we start doing that, for goodness sake, these books were of their time.
What are you going to do?
Well, I mean, these sensitivity readers, I mean, when they're looking at Roald Dahl, and if they see that the BFG is wearing a cloak which is the colour black, which is the colour. The word black is in the spectrum of colours. Am I right about that?
Yes.
So you've got pink, brown, blue, black, white. So
black.
for them to see that the colour of an item of clothing is racist, for me that bestows racism on them.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
You know, it's a great irony that these people are the bigots, as far as I'm concerned, because if I read that a character's wearing a black suit, I just think they're wearing a black suit. I don't have racial connotations when I see that
at the end
word.
of the
I'm
day,
not triggered by it.
Are you going to go all the way back to Great Expectations or, you know...
Well, they're probably working on it now.
Flanders or something.
Or the Bible.
Well, the
Terrible book.
They will take
Littered with it.
offence at anything that they can take offence by, and I think this trend is happening so widespread in our society now, and it's going to keep getting worse and worse. Everything now will start to cause offence, and I think this, this is a classic. This isn't something that we should be censoring, and I think that anything that might be slightly inflammatory will now be censored because they want to keep their bubble going. They want to promote this censorship, and this is something that's going to continue on.
Let's talk about Ulrika Johnson, former Gladiators presenter, of course. Writing in The Sun this week, shared that she has felt scolded and criticised and judged for having 4 children with 4 different men. In fact, she's been termed the 4x4 mum, which is surely deeply sexist. She branded it as pure misogyny, as celebrity dads like Jude Law, who has 7 children with 4 different women, and Eddie Murphy, who has 10 kids with 5 women, are seen as legends with no judgment cast upon them, whilst she herself and former Atomic Kitten Natalie Hamilton are demonised in society. So do we judge women who have children with different fathers? Anna?
I mean, to be fair, I feel sorry for the children in this scenario because, especially, you're in a public lens, aren't you? And for their fathers, mothers, whatever, their lives are all out there, and it's the children that are going to be dragged into this. Especially like if you've got different partners and all of that. I think this is something that men and women should be judged for. If this is that is high numbers, And I'm not surprised, to be fair, that women would be more focused on in this narrative.
Well, yeah, so Ulrika Johnson, she's been called a 4x4.
I know, yeah.
Right, which means
that's quite
4
extreme.
children, 4 men. That's indelicate, isn't it?
Horrible.
Yeah.
Actually, it's rude and it's horrible.
Yeah.
That shouldn't happen at all.
Yeah.
I mean, you shouldn't judge women for having multiple fathers for their children. You should and it shouldn't happen to women more than it happens to men. It's just...
Is there a flip side, though? Is it bad for society if either partner, male or female, has different spouses?
What matters?
Is it great for the kids?
What matters is that the parent looking after the children has enough time and enough money to raise them, to give them the support they need. Now, if Ulrika Johnson's got 4 children by 4 different men, but she's got enough money, she's got enough time, she's got enough support around her, it doesn't really matter. She is quite right, and so the other one is Natasha Hamilton, isn't she?
Yeah.
They're quite right that...
Natalie Hamilton.
Natalie Hamilton. That they're picked upon, women are picked upon because of this. I mean, that story was printed in The Sun, and no one really mentions that the owner of The Sun, Rupert Murdoch, has 6 children by 3 women, does he? No one mentions it.
For sure.
Also a bit, I think there's more important things going on in the world right now than what people do in their personal lives. It's very disgusting.
Duncan, what do you think? Old school sexism or...
Well, I don't know. It sort of harks back to the days when if a guy had lots of girlfriends, he was a stud, and if a girl had lots of boyfriends, she was a slag. And so I think maybe we've just got a point.
Anna when you said that. I think
over her shoulder there was an image of me on a television. I was looking at
full
that.
disclosure, you should have been looking at Linda. But listen, burn my bridges there.
Now I'm in danger.
There'll be a poison piece in tomorrow's Mail. Character assassination. So look, let's have a look at our final story. Hollywood royalty, Catherine Zeta-Jones and Michael Douglas, have reportedly moved into a new apartment in St James's Palace, right? One of the actual royal properties, making them neighbours with none other than King Charles and the Queen Consort, as the couple make their move into London's oldest palace. Which famous building would you like to live in, or indeed my panel? First of all, I mean, this is quite a move, isn't it? They're going to get great security.
Well, yeah, St James's Palace is still guarded by the household cavalry round the clock. If you go and visit it, you'll see the soldiers standing there.
You wake up in the morning to the sound of horses' hooves.
You would do, because, of course, that's where all the soldiers and military people get on board their horses. That's how bad I am at knowing the right terminology.
Mount.
And my daughter's a horse rider. She's going to kill me. Mount their horses.
Dad's in trouble.
But it's an extraordinary thought that Catherine Zeta-Jones and Michael Douglas might share an abode with Prince Charles, King
It's
Charles.
quite neat in a way, because they're Hollywood royalty, aren't
Exactly. And they really are. They're not Z-listers.
No,
Catherine
not at all.
Zeta-Jones and Michael Douglas, a true icon of Hollywood. So good luck to them. Well, we've got some other famous buildings. I wondered whether you at home or my panel in the studio would like to live in Buckingham Palace. Let's have a look at this. We've got a nice picture of course, the King's residence. Have you been inside the palace, Linda or Duncan?
I have. First of all, I went in to meet Michael Shea, the press secretary, when I was made a royal correspondent. And then I went to a garden party, and then I went to an art exhibition and a fashion exhibition.
Have you been in as well, Anna?
No, I haven't. Not the
But would you? What do you think? Was it nice to live in there, Buckingham Palace? Is it the best house in London?
No, it's
Why not?
It's got a fabulous garden, but effectively the Queen's view of Buckingham Palace is probably similar to anyone else. It's just an office. I mean, it hasn't. It's not a home.
The garden's amazing.
A bit tatty. OK, let's have a look at a few other houses. What about the Taj Mahal? Let's have a look at this. Yes.
Yes.
Pretty good, isn't it? I wonder how many bathrooms that's got. Not as many as Harry and Meghan. OK, how about the Eiffel Tower?
Oh, I'm out. Too frightened to hike.
A little bit windy. There is a restaurant in the middle. How about this place?
Not.
who would like to live in the White House?
Oh, nice, very nice.
Could that be a bit like the palace, more of an office as well, do you think? Or
No,
is
I
it
think
homely?
private apartments are really nice. Yeah.
Oh, I never got to go in those parts.
OK, here's an engineering challenge for you. What about living in one of those?
In a tomb?
Try sleeping on
There you
that
go.
point. And last but not least.
Oh, I think there's some rather
In a
nice
clock.
apartments.
There you go.
Yeah. If in the Houses of Parliament, they've got some nice...
You'd be able to rent them out to MPs for a fortune and they can put it on their
Wouldn't
expenses.
you? Although you get woken up by those gongs on the hour. Can I thank my brilliant panel of Linda, Anna and Duncan? Really enjoyed your company. And most importantly, thank you to you for listening and watching at home. We'll do it all again tomorrow at 9. Headliners is next.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView, Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
He's the king of breakfast TV, and he's back.
Eamon Holmes back on the TV with me this morning.
Even remember my name.
I know, it's been 4 months. You have holy water by your bed?
Oh, yes.
Oh, good.
Already to bless.
Oh, Eamon. Oh.
Why do you not believe anything I say?
Eamon Holmes back on GB News Breakfast at 6 a.m.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics,